Good morning, everyone. Welcome to the Tablelands Regional Council Ordinary Meeting for October. Could I remind everyone to turn their devices onto silent or off, please? Do we have apologies? No. Could I ask everyone to be upstanding, please? I'd like to acknowledge the traditional owners of the land that we meet on and pay respect to elders past, present and emerging. We'll now observe a minute's silence as a mark of respect for the members of our community who have recently passed. We wish their family and friends peace and comfort during this challenging time. Thank you. Item 6, councillors, declarations of any interest by councillors or senior council officers. No conflicts, thank you. Item 7, confirmation of minutes. 7.1, the minutes of 25 September 2025. Could I have a mover and seconder for those minutes be accepted as a true and accurate record? Councillor Barty and Councillor Bilney. Those in favour? Carried, thank you. 7.2, the confirmation of the minutes, the 1st of October. That was a special meeting. Could I have a mover and seconder that those minutes be accepted as a true and accurate record? Councillor Barty, moving. Councillor Hayden, seconding. Those in favour? Carried. Thank you.
I wasn't here, Rob.
Okay.
That's
Thank you.
yeah.
Thank you. Item 8, business arising. Jackie, did we have any business arising from the council meeting of 25 September?
A question was raised regarding how many not-for-profit clubs still had rates outstanding and how many have been paid. And Erica emailed, the manager of finance distributed an email on the 17th of October of the 80 sporting and other clubs that received general rates, 75 have paid and 5 have not.
Gotcha, thank you. Yeah, I'm not sure which councillor raised that question, but does that satisfy that question, councillors? Thank you. Are there any questions from the floor regarding those minutes of 25 September? No, thank you. All right, we'll move to the minutes of the 1st of October. Any matters arising from the minutes of the 1st of October? That was the special meeting. No matters arising, thank you. Okay, that brings us to our item 9, deputations. I'd like to invite Farrell Morrison to come up to the lectern to talk about the Yungaburra Library. Thank you, Farrell.
Yeah, thanks for having me here. I'm Farrell Morrison. I'm here on behalf of 7 Yungaburra volunteer organisations: Yungaburra Men's Shed, of which I'm Secretary, Yungaburra Association Inc, Yungaburra Beautification Inc, Yungaburra Village Artists, Yungaburra Lions, Yungaburra Lionesses and Yungaburra CWA. We represent a fairly broad cross-section of the Yungaburra community, and it's by no means exhaustive because there are many sectors who deserve a voice in this, but the essence of this proposal is our volunteers and our involvement with you to benefit the Yungaburra community. I'm sure you're aware that your proposal to close our library raised eyebrows, to say the least, and perhaps outrage. We were part of that initially, but then we saw how it seemed to galvanise a big section of the community, and we now see that it's created a great opportunity to investigate and make positive change. We agree with you. It's time for a change, and if not now, when? Others have put the case to you for keeping a library in their communities, and I think Gillian Long's presentation for Millamilla put it quite eloquently. We support that fully, but I don't intend to go over the same ground now. I'd like to quote to you from your own submission to the recent inquiry into the state of volunteering in Queensland in 2024. Volunteering fosters a sense of pride in local achievements, with volunteers often noting that their efforts help shape the lives of young people, strengthen their communities. The diverse roles volunteers play are crucial for local and statewide development. Now that's a great motherhood statement, and it's repeated in some form by most of the submissions to that inquiry, but all of the volunteer organisations that I represent here today have been beneficiaries of your council's movement, so we know you mean it. But we're now asking you to give our proposal serious consideration and to trust our commitment to this project, trust us to work with you to make change for the better. Can I just make one more point with some facts noted in that inquiry? It relates to the cost-benefit discussions about our library. Volunteering contributes over $117 billion annually to the Queensland civic, social and economic value. It's a big number, but keep that in mind. Volunteers aren't free. There's recruitment, training, support, background checks, etc., insurances. But for every dollar invested in volunteering, it returns $4.70. It's a very profitable investment. We've looked at 2 scenarios. One, your stated aim publicly to close the library, and 2, that if you decided to keep the library open. Our contention is that a co-joint facility with the Visitor Information Centre and the library will be far more efficient and allow greater flexibility of use. So our suggestion in both these scenarios includes reconfiguration of the existing building by opening up the current dividing wall between the Visitor Information Centre and the library. And if the library is indeed closed, we propose a single point of entry to the facility, administered and staffed generally with the same volunteers who man the information centre. The current volunteers generally are very supportive of this concept. There'd be a collection of donated books, more akin to a large book exchange, books from the community, redundant books from your library and elsewhere, a community library. The collection should condense quite comfortably into the space of the current Visitor Information Centre, and the current library becomes available to the community whenever the facility is open. It's far better than the 10 hours per week, sometimes less, currently allocated. Existing public use of computers, printing, copying, newspapers, quiet reading space, etc. would continue, but with longer opening hours comes the ability to reintroduce important children's activities such as story time, First 5 Forever. Adult computer training, access to online learning programs can be included. Book clubs, coffee mornings, the possibilities are endless. The key is increased opening times facilitated by volunteers. The real bonus of this scenario is the flexibility to enhance the visitor experience of local content, a mini museum of our village and surrounds. We could include arts and crafts gallery, local history display, local flora and fauna explained, our Indigenous heritage. Again, it's not an exhaustive list, but a grab bag of suggestions, and you would maintain involvement through the Visitor Information Centre. The concept of combined digital information centre and library is not new. Normanton and Georgetown both have very successful centres like this, and we're told that the integration of such community activities as First Five Forever sees travellers and young children join in. Grey nomads seem to enjoy watching their de facto grandchildren learning from storytelling. For many travellers, the local experience is as important as sightseeing. Now, if Council decides to keep the library open, then we suggest a similar scenario, but with council-controlled book collection, council librarian involvement. And if you can indulge me for a minute, I'd like to give you a very brief background of my library experience and why I prefer this scenario. In my 40 years or so as an architect in North Queensland, I've been involved in the design of library buildings, in renovations and relocation of existing libraries, none of them public, but all for educational institutions. They range from my involvement with the librarian during the design of the first stage of the JCU campus in Cairns, primary and secondary school libraries in Cairns, and closer to home, we designed the St Thomas's Primary School Library in Merida, and I master planned St Stephen's Catholic College from when it was a paddock growing hay. I remained fully involved until about 5 years ago, when it had grown to a student population of around 600. Now, these are all school communities, educational libraries, but there are relevant influences I'd like to put to you. Firstly, I've developed a great respect for librarians and what they bring. They're much, much more than the clerical person behind the desk, just a guardian of books. And the evolution of technology over the past decades has only made their multifaceted role more relevant. Then there's the importance of the location of the library. It's the hub of any school community. Everybody knows where it is, an obvious place to go for a multitude of functions. It's a safe place and a social place. And lastly, the way a library can and should respond to its users. The development of the St Stephen's Library might give an insight. It started in 2006 as a small collection squeezed into a room intended for another future use. It served a very small number of students, mostly straight out of primary school, and I think the only computer was for the staff who used it for record keeping. As the student population grew, matured physically and intellectually, we obtained grants to plan and build a purpose-made library. It was to grow in stages, but we didn't try to plan the whole thing. The first stage saw a larger collection, meeting rooms, and importantly, an outside student recreation zone where they could socialise. Some reference computers were included, and in subsequent stages, we doubled the size of that space. Technology was growing all around us at ever increasing rates, so computer use increased. The last stage saw very little increase in the collection, but some small pods for groups of students to meet with laptops to discuss and pair assignments were included, and there was a distinct change in demographics from the earlier years. So at this stage, because many of the students involved were now in their last year of secondary school, bigger kids, more intellectual requirements. So over about 10 years, the library evolved with the changing needs of the school community. Back to home, Yungaburra. I think it's important to maintain the influence of a librarian. Important that we have a collection that's formally controlled with ongoing access to a greater variety of books. Important to have access to the State Library and its resources. But maybe we can learn from the Cook Shower experience, where the librarian stays at Cooktown, administering the voluntary helpers at more remote places like Bloomfield, where they receive returning books, they issue books to patrons, they stock shelves, etc. They're not replacing or supplanting the librarian, but maintaining a library in a community where the council cannot afford to have a full-time librarian. Perhaps in our case it becomes a fixed outreach centre with periodic visiting library staff. With the location, we already have the perfect location with our library in the centre of the village. It's a perfect place, pub on one corner, library on the other. With the increased opening hours discussed earlier, the opportunities abound for increased community activities and increased promotion to reinvigorate this vital community space championed earlier by some of the presentations to you from others. And I'd suggest to you that with progressively reduced opening hours that we've had over the years, our librarians have not had the opportunity to develop the library along the lines of my St Stephen's experience. It's the concept of growth with change, not the detail. We have a changing demographic, digital information abounds, tourism has become an important element in our existence, social isolation is now talked about as an epidemic. We need our library, but we need to respond to change. And so this co-joined facility, staffed by volunteers, offers a wonderful chance to work with you to effect such change, and if not now, when? What we're suggesting is that we need time to put this proposal to the community. Our understanding is that whatever way you vote today, the library will not close tomorrow. There'll be some form of transition, and we would like to use this time to investigate and come back with a concrete proposal. We're not convinced that we need another committee in the village, but I do believe a temporary body established to listen to positive and realistic suggestions is warranted. We don't want just suggestions from library users. We want to reach out to those who in fact don't go to the library, who haven't been surveyed or counted, and ask what might entice them back. We need TRC officer involvement, obviously. And also, if she's willing, I think the local councillor would be a great convener of such a group. So if you're agreeable, then I'm sure we can work with you to get the right people together. Thank you again for the opportunity of making this presentation, and we look forward to a mutually rewarding outcome.
Thanks very much, Beryl. Thank you. Councillors, that brings us to item 10, the mayoral minute. I've got 3 items all related to advocacy that took place in October. It was a particularly busy month. On the 1st of October, TRC hosted the F&Q Rock on the Tablelands. It was the first time in more than a decade for Tablelands to host the Rock. It was a great event, and we made the most of showcasing some of our key assets, built and natural, to mayors and CEOs from across our region. The second main advocacy event was the F&Q Rock delegation to Canberra. On the 8th and 9th of October, F&Q Rock mayors attended a delegation to Federal Parliament to meet with ministers, assistant ministers, shadow ministers, ministerial staff. Meetings were held with the following MPs and staff: the Honourable Christy McBain MP, Minister for Emergency Management, Regional Development and Local Government; Jamie Chaffey MP, Shadow Minister for Agriculture and Resources; advisors to the Honourable Pat Conroy MP, Minister for Defence, Industry, Pacific Island Affairs; advisors to the Honourable Richard Marles MP, Deputy Prime Minister, Minister for Defence; the Honourable Matt Smith MP, Member for Leichhardt; the Honourable Madeline King MP, Minister for Resources in Northern Australia; Dr Anne Webster MP, Shadow Minister for Local Government and Regional Communications; Senator Matt O'Sullivan MP, Shadow Minister for Fisheries and Forestry and Infrastructure; the Honourable Andrew Wilcox MP, Member for Dawson, Shadow Assistant Minister for Manufacturing and Sovereign Capability; the Honourable Josh Wilson MP, Assistant Minister for Climate Change, Energy and Emergency Management. The priorities of the ROC were the financial assistance grants and their reinstatement to 1% of the federal tax revenue, which would be up from the current 0.5%. Also a review of the national key freight routes following repeated breakages in key routes and subsequent food shortages in our region in recent years. And finally, a special economic zone for Northern Australia, a strategic framework to revitalise our regional remote and very remote communities by addressing long-standing structural disadvantage in services, infrastructure and employment. And the third advocacy event took place just last week, and that was the LGAQ State Conference at the Gold Coast. The Deputy Mayor, the CEO and I attended the annual conference last week. During the conference we met with Mr Vic Panisi, the Chair of the Grants Commission, seeking a better outcome on TRC's financial assistance grants. We met with Sally Stenholt, who's the DG, Director General of Transport and Main Roads, in relation to traffic congestion in Atherton, and in particular the need for the urgent state investment in Grove Street and Golf Links Road intersections. We also met with the Minister Anne Lay, the MP, the Minister for Local Government, Water and Disaster Management, Fire and Volunteers. We spoke about our submission to the Redistribution Commission regarding the Hill electorate, and also invited the Minister to the Tablelands when she's next in the region. We also had some other meetings with other parties. But yeah, councillors, a lot of advocacy has happened in October. It's been an incredibly busy month. I'd like to move that my mayoral minute be accepted. Those.
I've got a question.
Councillor-
With the
Councillor
LGOQ, the motions that we put up, how did they go?
Well, what happens, yeah, the motions we put up were supported.
Yeah, okay,
Yeah, one was unanimous, but yeah, they were strongly supported.
okay.
And now we just have to wait.
Yeah.
Because the LGAQ takes them to the relevant,
Yeah.
to the relevant minister. Yeah. Thanks, Councillor Barty, I should have mentioned that. Very good. So I'd like to move that the mayoral minute be adopted. Those in favour? Carried. Thank you. Okay, councillors, what I'd like to do now is I'd like to move a procedural motion that we set aside the standing orders and we move item 14.2, which is TRC Library Service Review Report, that we bring that item forward so that it comes in just after the Chief Executive Officer's report. And we'll deal with the libraries straight after the Chief Executive Officer report, and then the meeting will return to the published agenda. We'd go straight back to 11.2 after we deal with libraries. Can I move that procedural motion, and those in favour of doing that? Carried. That's 7. Thank you. Okay, that brings us to item 11.1, the Chief Executive Officer Report, October 2025. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Mayor, and through the Chair. I'm very pleased to present my Chief Executive Officer's report for October 2025. And it's a useful opportunity for me to provide a monthly update to our community on some of the key initiatives we have underway. Together with the Mayor and Deputy Mayor, I attended the Local Government Association of Queensland conference at the Gold Coast last week. It was a really useful opportunity to meet with other CEOs and councillors and to discuss issues affecting local government and to look at the ways we can work together to achieve better outcomes. One initiative I'm particularly interested in creating is opportunities for chief executives for local governments and also general managers wishing to, or our emerging chief executive leaders, I should say, to undertake secondments in different councils so that councillors can experience different leadership styles that we have and our skills and knowledge bases, and we can support emerging CEOs and executives by broadening out their experience and exposure to different councils and communities. With recruitment, so I'm currently recruiting the General Manager placemaking role among other recruitments, including the Development Assessment Manager. We had an outstanding response to the GM role and to other roles, including that some of the roles that are usually harder to attract to, and we've had some very high calibre candidates. We're really committed to ensuring that we become a workplace of choice, to ensure we attract and retain the very best calibre of staff, committed to delivering for our community. To that end, staff wellbeing is and will remain really important to the TRC executive leadership team, and it's great to see that word is getting out that we are a council to work for and to partner with, and to see such high calibre candidates applying for various roles. One of the impediments we still have, and it's an impediment that we share with, whether it's with state or health or aged care or other employers, and that is that the issue of housing. So that's certainly something that we will need to address, because we do have people that will not be able to accept positions because we simply don't have enough housing in the region. We've got a number of events happening, from famous authors to the Living Well Expo, so please jump online at the TRC website to have a look at those. One in particular, our Living Well Expo, will be running from 9 to 3 p.m. on Saturday the 15th of November at the Merrylands Hall at the Atherton Showground, and it's a fantastic free family-free event to celebrate community and connection by bringing together support services, activities and experiences.
I've listed a number of project updates on my CEO report. I've also got the link there if anyone's watching online and they'd like to know more about any of our projects. And also if you'd like to know any more about some of the events that are happening throughout our region, please check them out on our website. Thank you. I'm happy to take any questions.
Thank you. Any questions, councillors? Could we have a mover and seconder to adopt the CEO's report? Councillor Gilney's moving, Councillor Lang seconding. Those in favour? Carried. That's 7. Thank you. Okay, so that now brings us to item 14.2, which we just brought forward, which is the TRC Library Service Review Report. So would you like to talk to that, Hilary? Yeah. I'll just hand over to the General Manager. Thank you.
Thank you, and through the Chair. This report outlines the review of our library service and presents the final recommendations for the Council's consideration. Council adopted a service planning framework in 2022 to help ensure our services remain efficient, effective and sustainable. With external support, we undertook a baseline review. At the June 23 ordinary meeting, the service planning report was received together with Council's prioritised list of services for review. This included libraries. Prior to this decision, officers had commenced gathering information to inform the development of the 5-year library strategy, including data on library visits, program attendance and borrowing trends. They also now began researching how other councils are delivering modern and sustainable library services. People in our community feel very strongly about libraries. We know that libraries are so much more than books. They're welcoming public spaces and deliver highly valued programs that play an important role in learning, connection and community life. The aim of the Library Service Review was to ensure that our libraries continue to deliver sustainable, equitable and responsive services. We looked at ways to improve operational efficiency, make better use of resources, maintain access for vulnerable and remote communities and strengthen the role of libraries. We asked the question, could we deliver better community outcomes if we applied our resources in a different way? The team developed a series of interconnected proposals to meet communities' future needs, where doing less of something could enable us to do more of something else. Progress on the review was paused for the 2024 local government elections. After the elections, councillors toured our library branches to gain a better understanding of how the service is used. An information session was held to share more detail on the services and to gauge councillors' appetite for change. Councillors expressed a clear preference that we minimise impacts on staff, look for changes that would activate and enhance our library service, and keep a focus on efficiency rather than cost cutting. With this direction, officers refined a set of proposals which Council formally endorsed. This endorsement enabled more comprehensive exploration and staff consultations. This work has now been completed and this report presents the final recommendations from the Library Service Review. I'm happy to take any questions.
Any questions for the General Manager? Councillor Billman.
Through the Chair. Thank you, Farrell, for your deputation. Much appreciated. I do have some other comments which, as we proceed, I'll go through, but you mentioned the library strategy. Where is that going to be situated here on after?
So that will now recommence the development. We still need to develop our 5-year library strategy.
Yep.
It was paused to enable this process, but we will now recommence the development of that strategy.
Because I think the strategy originally was from that 24 to 28 period.
Yeah.
That's why we did it in the 23.
Yes.
Yeah. Anyway, so yeah, it will be recommenced. Is what
Yes.
you're saying. Okay. Thank you.
Any questions for the General Manager? Thank you. Okay, councillors, we've got a number of items here to work through. With regards to item 1 related to Mount Garnet, there's a recommendation there. I also understand that Councillor Hayden has a motion. So do we have a mover? Councillor Cardew?
Yeah, I'll move the first item.
Okay, Councillor Cardew is moving item 1. Do we have a seconder? Councillor Spanos is seconding. Councillor Cardew.
Yeah, thanks, Mayor. Yeah, look, I support the officer's recommendation. This is what we've talked about over the course of this review, which has been a very long review. The Mount Garnet Library is a standalone library in a building on a freehold parcel of land that council owns. Out of all the libraries, it's the most underutilised, I believe, from reading through the report and the data that's presented. So it makes perfect sense to co-locate with another community entity. In this particular case, the Visitor Information Centre, which is in a brilliant location in Mount Garnet. It's a new building. It may need some minor modification to have the library in it, but it will free up the existing facility, which is old. It's an old timber house that's been converted to the library, and allow council to dispose of that asset if it sees fit. So it makes perfect sense to me to co-locate with the Visitor Information Centre. Not taking the library away, it's still going to be there. And for the utilisation that it receives, it's a very good option. So I strongly support the relocation of the Visitor Information Centre as per the officer's recommendation.
Thanks, Councillor Cardew. Councillors? Councillor Hayden?
So I have an alternative motion to this, so do we wait for the vote to take? Yeah, okay.
Councillors, anyone else like to talk for this or against this? Yeah, look, councillors, I can't support Councillor Cardew's motion on this one. I think the Mount Garnet community is our most disadvantaged community in the entire Shire, and the library doesn't have a lot of traffic because it's in the catchment out there. There's about 900 people, so it's not an extravagant library. It's not a big library, but the important value that it places in that community, whether it's just for some quiet time, whether it's a safe space, whether it's an opportunity for young children to be occupied in a managed way, it's a really valuable service, and we're not going to get the same type of service if we were to shift it up to the Visitor Information Centre, which is on the highway. I think it's better that the facility, which is really in a good place in the town and is well known, yeah, I think it really needs to stay where it is. So, council, does anyone like to talk for or against this one?
I'd like to make exercise my right to reply.
Councillor Cardew's right of reply.
Is anybody else finished?
I'd like to mention something as well. I would like to listen to Annette's motion at some stage before I vote. So if we could, are we able to get to that before we go into a vote?
No, but it's open to
Discussion?
the councillor to actually talk about her reasons against this motion, if you are going against the motion, so this is the time. So you wouldn't say the alternative, but
I'm happy to speak against the motion that's on the board. Yeah. So I would like to not relocate the Mount Garnet Library because my reason for keeping the Mount Garnet Library in the current location, separate from the Visitor Information Centre, is the library is a quite safe and welcoming community hub supporting children, students, seniors and families with reading, learning and programs. The Visitor Centre Information Centre, by contrast, is busy, high energy and public facing. Combining the two risk noise, congestion and distraction that would undermine the library's role. Our library is a place of refuge and connection. Co-locating it with a tourism hub could deter those who rely on its calm and inclusive environment. Both services are important, but each work best in a space designed for its purpose. For the well-being of our community and the integrity of the library, I ask councillors to keep the operation of the library in its current location.
Councillor Spanos, did you want to?
I've listened to it and that's all. I'll take that on board, thanks.
So would anyone else like to talk to this before we go to Councillor Cardew? Councillor Cardew, right, a reply.
Thank you, Mayor. I'm not taking the library away. The library will still be on Mount Garnet. You look at the table of utilisation of the library, out of the survey responses that was undertaken, there was two responses. We recognise that this council is financially strapped to sustain and maintain our assets as it stands at the moment. We all know this. We have to start making some hard decisions to get rid of some of our underutilised assets, and this has to be considered very carefully because the utilisation rate is extremely poor. The location of the Vic Centre, in my mind, is a prime location. There's a playground right next door that the kids can go out and you know, visit the library. Mum and Dad goes to the library, kids can go and play in the group. It's a perfect location. And that would allow us to free up that other asset. So we've got to start at some point. We're not taking the library away. It's the most underutilised library in the TRC with only a handful of people using it on occasions. It's costing this council a lot of money and we've got to start pulling back, reining back. So I support the officer's recommendation. We're not taking anything away from them. If anything, we'll actually be enhancing it. Thank you, Mayor.
Thanks, Councillor Cardew.
I'd like to echo what Kev has just said. That's how I feel about it as well. Location and utilisation.
So yeah, so that's it. We're going to go to the vote now. That was the right reply. So we've got a mover and a seconder for the recommendation that's on the screen. Those in favour? So that's defeated. Councillor Cardew and Councillor Spanos. Councillor Hayden,
Okay,
your alternative motion.
Yep. The council not approve the relocation of the Mount Garnet Library Service to co-locate with the Mount Garnet Business Information Centre and Museum by 31st of December 2026.
So Councillor Hayden's got an alternative motion. Do we have a seconder? Councillor Bilney seconding. Councillor Hayden, it's back to you.
Okay, so just read what I said.
Would you like to write a reply, Councillor Hayden? At the end?
No, it's okay.
Yeah,
I was just going to read out what I was saying, that my reason for keeping the Mount Garnet Library in the current location is because I consider libraries are a quite safe and welcoming community hub, and it supports the children, students and seniors and families with reading, learning and programs. And the Visitor Centre, by contrast, is a busy, high energy and public facing place. So combining the two risks noise, congestion, distraction that would undermine the library role.
Councillor Hayden, anyone else like to speak for or against? No one else like to speak?
So we'll take it to the vote.
We've got a mover and seconder of the alternative motion. Those in favour? Carried. That's 5-5-2. That's Councillor Spanos and Councillor Cardew. And on that earlier motion, Jackie, I had them back to front. The opposing councillors were the 5 on the first one.
Yeah.
Okay, so that brings us to the second dot point. Sorry, councillors, we'll just check the order. Okay, councillors, so that brings us to item 2. And Hilary, could I just get an explanation for item 2 and item 3, just so councillors understand how they fit?
Certainly, thank you, through the chair. So one of the things that were included in the proposal, in the proposed changes that council adopted earlier this year were review of opening hours and also trialling extended hours in some libraries. Rather than have something really specific in a council decision about a particular library or a particular time frame, which then means we've got to come back to the council every time we want to do something a little different. We wanted to just get the scope for officers, whatever libraries we have after this meeting, that we can review our opening hours, that we'll be doing so within the adopted budget, so not making any changes to the costs of the library services, but reviewing the opening hours across our libraries to support activation and access. And then also we will trial extended weeknight and Saturday opening hours at selected libraries, but again, that will be within the adopted budget. So we'll know what we have to play with when we know what other decisions you make today. If that makes sense.
So you're yet to make the, so you'll see at 456, you're actually deciding whether to retain or not some libraries. So this decision will be relevant to the ones you choose to retain. And that would be the same as 3.
Yeah, so look, I think item 2 and 3 are just related to council officers having the agility to manage whatever library assets remain open, having the agility to manage those assets within the budget limit. So do we have a mover for item 2? Councillor Hayden's moving item 2. A seconder. Councillor Billney. Councillor Hayden, you like to talk to that?
No, that's fine. I think it's a good idea.
Yeah. Anyone like to talk to item 2? Those in favour? Carried. That's 6-1. Councillor Spanos. Item 3. The trial of extended weeknight and Saturday opening hours at selected libraries within the adopted library service budget. So yeah, this is in line with the one we've just passed. Do we have a mover and seconder? Councillor Lang moving. And Councillor Barty seconding. Councillor Lang, would you like to talk to that? Anyone like to talk to this one? Those in favour? Carried, that's 6-1. Councillor Cardew. Okay, that brings us to item number 4, and I believe we also have an alternative motion here from Councillor Vardy. But do we have a mover of a motion for item 4? Would you like to explain?
So for this one, the decision, so the council officer's recommendation is actually given the decision entirely to you. So you wouldn't move the council officer's recommendation, you would move an alternative motion.
Oh,
So if anyone has an alternative motion you'd like to move, or a motion you'd like to move.
Councillor Vardy.
So my alternative motion is that council retain the Yungaburra Library and support the transition to a community managed model, allowing time for a community group to form and to identify opportunities for shared use of space and integration with the Yungaburra Visitor Information Centre.
Thanks, Councillor Vardy. Do we have a seconder for Councillor Vardy's alternative? Councillor Spanos is seconding that one. Councillor Vardy, back to you.
So this alternative motion reflects the point made by Farrell in his excellent deputation this morning and supports the transition of the Yungaburra Library to a community managed model. Our community in Yungaburra is changing and it's growing, and we need to ensure that our services also grow and adapt in response. This approach provides an opportunity to increase the effectiveness of the library in reaching out to the community while strengthening partnerships between the council, volunteers and the Yungaburra Visitor Information Centre. I also just want to say to those community members who contacted me about the Yungaburra Library, overwhelmingly your concern was for others in the community and not yourself, and I just want to thank those people for reaching out and for caring.
Thanks, Councillor Vardy. Anyone else like to talk either for this one or against this one? Councillor Bilney.
Yeah, through the chair. Yungaburra is a valued community asset, even as traditional borrowing and membership may have declined. Current use patterns show it functioning largely as a returns hub. However, it should not be interpreted as justification for closure. Instead, the library now presents an opportunity to evolve into a multi-purpose cultural and tourism hub. This approach retains the library's accessibility and recognition while broadening its functions to serve a wider cross-section of the community. It is my strong view that adaptation rather than closure will present the most effective and future-focused outcome.
Thanks, Councillor Bilney. Anyone else like to talk to this one? Councillor Cardew.
Yeah, thanks, mate. My initial thoughts on this, that I was going to vote to close the library. However, the deputation from Farrell this morning has shed a different light on it. And it's something that I hadn't thought of, where you could combine the two resources together and run them in a voluntary manner, taking that cost burden off the council. So if that works, then it'll be a good outcome for the Yungaburra community. If it doesn't work, then we're going to be sitting here in another 6 months' time debating whether we're going to close it again, in my view. So I'd like to understand what the mechanics would be in making it work. From what the presentation from Farrell said to me was that it would be run by volunteers with a librarian not necessarily based at Yungaburra, but more than likely based in Atherton, that would oversee the library component of running the library in conjunction with the Vic Centre, and the actual physical on-ground running of the centre would be done by the volunteers, by the Vic volunteers, which would incorporate library volunteers, I would assume. So the other thing too, I also considered was that it is all one building. So, and we still have the Vic Centre there. So if we were to close it, what would we do with the library portion? Well, you know, my thoughts at the beginning was that the Vic Centre would move into that space and make it a bigger, because it is a tourism hub on the tablelands. So I think a combined use is a good idea. It's something that that I've said in my return emails to the many emails that we got during the course of this review from all sectors of the public, that I would support a coexistence with other community groups within their community. I'm a little bit disappointed that the other communities like Miller and Herberton haven't come up with this. We've had deputations from both communities, and in both those deputations, this was not suggested from my recollection. So, listening to Farrell this morning, I think it's a good option. So I'm going to support it at this point in time, and hopefully that the mechanisms and the mechanics of making it work, reducing council's costs, and works. The other thing that I had a private conversation with Farrell prior to the meeting was that was there an opportunity to offer them a lease over the site, whereas a peppercorn lease, whereas they take responsibility of the whole show, and they would be responsible for some of the maintenance, again relieving some of the financial burden on council. And in conjunction with the men's shed, Farrell assures me that that's more than possible. So having all that information there with regard to the Yungaburra Library, I'm happy to support it, provided that it reduces council's costs. And I'd like to be able to say that if it doesn't, then we have to revisit it.
Councillor, does anyone else like to talk to this one? Would you like to come back, write a reply, Councillor Barty? Is it a question? You got a
It's
question?
sort of just no, it's not really a question, but it was just a comment that I was gonna.
Yeah, well, it's not, so we might just go to see if there's other councillors, because you'll have a right to reply, Councillor Barty. Councillor Lang?
Look, so I was the one that actually moved the motion for this process to happen, and for that, I apologise to the community for the concern that has caused, and to staff as well. Going back over everything and having a clear think about it, the benefits to council for closing any library are very minimal. Not worth it, as far as I'm concerned, so I won't be supporting any closures at all.
Thanks, Councillor Lang. Anyone else like to talk before we go back to Councillor Barty? Councillor Barty, you've got the floor.
Thank you. It was just more in response to what Councillor Cardew said about the mechanics of how it's going to operate, and we don't know that yet, but I'd like the opportunity that when we do come up with a plan that we can come back and present it to council, and I don't know if that needs to be incorporated here or just verbally saying that that's what we intend to do anyway, is once we flesh it out. Yeah, I don't have to include that in the motion, do I? I'd like that opportunity to present.
That's a good point.
Is this a question, Councillor Cardew?
Well, you can be involved if you want.
I've got a question, yes.
Yeah.
I'd like to see that, and I'd like to ask the councillor who moved it if she would include that in her alternate motion.
Is that all right? If I refuse that, then once we do have a plan that we come back and present it to council?
You could do it as a CIS.
Okay.
Yeah,
We could do it as a deputation, or you could do it as
As a
a
CIS.
CIS, whatever.
Yeah.
CIS is, you've got longer.
Well,
So you can-
we'd probably like to invite you out there once we've got a plan, to be honest, so it's probably going to be a field trip, guys.
So
I think a
we'll call it
CIS gives us an opportunity to have a conversation. Yeah, I mean that. But it gives us an opportunity to have a conversation then as well.
Look, I don't think we need to include it in,
We don't need to
No.
include
I
it.
don't think we
That's
need to
okay.
include it in the
Handshake deal?
motion. We
Yeah,
can,
okay.
we can.
Yep, that's our intention.
All right, so final call, Councillor Barty, you write a reply, would you like to wrap that up?
That's good, I think enough's been said. Thank you.
Okay, so we've got a mover and seconder of the motion on the screen. Those in favour? Carried, that's 7. Thank you. Okay, so that brings us to item 5, the Miller Library. Do we have a move? Councillor Vilnius moving?
No, you've got a motion.
We've got a motion.
We don't have a motion. The motion is, I mean, it's completely with councillors to decide the next two, so does anyone have?
Councillor,
Yeah,
sorry,
through
Councillor
the
Vilnius.
chair, my motion will be to retain the library service in Miller.
So Councillor Vilnius moving a motion to retain the library service in Miller. Do we have a seconder? Councillor Hayden. Councillor Vilnius.
Yeah, through the chair. My comments that I'm going to make now will also relate to the next item, number 6. And I too would also like to thank all those concerned members of the public that took the time to email me raising their concerns about the potential closures of various libraries on the Tablelands. When this was initially requested by council, and despite external advice urging caution about the libraries under a service review, I was not supportive of the closure of any libraries on the Tablelands at that time. My position hasn't changed. There's little gain. If anything, from this though, I would take a positive, and it's galvanised the community, as Farrell has mentioned, in Yungaburra. I think it also did it in Miller and Herberton in particular. The positive is that it's identified opportunities for external agencies that may be able to add value and services to the libraries using the localities as satellite or outreach services. I'm talking things like Medicare, MyGov, those sort of things. If there can be some partnerships and utilisation of those buildings, I think that's a great outcome for those areas that not service like the bigger towns like Malanda, Ravenshoe and Atherton. For me, Miller, Herberton should continue operationally, and we've gone through Mount Garnet, but I did make a comment, it should remain in situ at its current location.
Thanks, Councillor Vilney. Anyone else like to talk for or against this one? Councillor Cardew.
Yeah, thanks, Ben. I won't be supporting the recommendation to retain it. I believe that the library should be closed because of all the information that's in the report. It's it's another underutilised asset. What I would like to do, however, if the motion fails, to to adopt the officer's recommendation to close the library with the proviso that to give the community a chance to put something similar to what the Yungaburra community has put forward to us, to enter into some sort of volunteer management of it, similar to what's been presented here today. So, and that would take the burden off of us, similar to what it's doing to Yungaburra. So, in my view, again, we've got to make some of these hard decisions, and we're not doing it. Simply saying that we'll retain another underutilised service goes against what we've been told by our CEO with regards to our asset sustainability, etc. We simply can't afford it. So, you know, we've got to do something. So I won't be supporting it to leave it open as it is, but I would support the threat of closure of the library to try and spark some community involvement to take it on in a similar fashion what Yungaburra is. And I'll be saying the exact same thing for the Herberton one as well, because we've had deputations from those two communities, you know, with all the reasons why it should remain open, but nobody putting their hand up to help.
So councillor Kaji is proposing an alternative motion should this one not get up. Anyone else like to talk to the motion? Either for or against? Councillor Barber.
Again, probably in response to what councillor Kaju's raised there, do we need to give Yungaburra a crack at it first to see how it goes and then try again with the Millendorf and Herbert and give Yungaburra a chance to prove it, to prove the model maybe?
Yeah, it's not a discussion, councillor Vardy. If you'd like to talk to the motion.
That's all good.
Anyone else like to talk for or against this motion? Sure.
So you can support retaining it, which is the current motion. The other, if you wanted to incorporate what Kev said, you would defeat that motion, and your alternative motion would be to retain it, but then similarly with the Yungaburra motion is that you would
That's what I would like.
see if the different communities would be of interest to that. Yeah,
I sort of
but
feel
that
like
might
if
be.
we haven't got a community group that's reached out.
Well, no
but
one, yeah,
is
and you
this-
can't force the community to want to do.
Yeah,
Yes,
is this
yeah.
something that if the community's watching this and they're interested, they can reach out and we can bring this up at a later date? Is that something that's feasible?
If you
Look-
vote to retain it, there's, into the future, maybe you might get enough community interest in the different
that-
ones, but we can't
yeah.
force them to
Yeah,
want
yeah.
to.
Yeah,
But, I mean,
we
voting
can
to
put it
retain
out
it
there to.
doesn't mean that in the future, near future or distant future, a group might come forward and say, we want to do what Yungaburra is trying to do, yeah.
We might come back, you're the mover of this one, councillor, so we might come back to you for a right of reply, councillor Billman. Anyone else like to talk to this one way or another? Is this a question, councillor Kaji?
No, I want to talk to the motion,
No, you've already spoken to the motion.
but can I have another say?
No, you can ask a question. We're all talking once. It's according to the standing orders. That's what the standing orders say. So you can ask a question, but
Make it a question, Kev.
No, forget about it.
anyone else like to talk to this? All right, councillor Billman, it's your right of reply.
Yeah, through the chair, just to finalise, look, I am aware that in the past there has been some approaches to council for use of that library outside of normal ads. At that time, I'm not sure how it progressed or wasn't progressed, but I'm sure since we've gone through this process, the appetite to reinvestigate those opportunities will be there, and I'll be encouraging those people to do so.
Thanks very much. We've got a mover and seconder of the motion on the screen. Those in favour? That's 6. Thank you. Councillor Kaji. Okay, councillors, that brings us to item 6, the Herberton Library. Would anyone like to move a motion on item 6? Councillor Hayden.
I move to retain the library service centre.
Councillor Hayden's moving to retain. Do we have a seconder? Councillor Lang. Councillor Hayden.
The Herberton Library is a vital hub for lifelong learning, offering free access to books, internet and information for people of all ages. It is a safe, welcoming space for everyone, regardless of income, background or age. Many residents, especially seniors or those without transport, depend on the library for social interaction and community programs. Not everyone has access to computers, printers or reliable internet. The library ensures equal access to digital technology for all. The Herberton Library delivers huge community benefits for a small cost, providing service that would otherwise be unaffordable for many households. So the library is a part of the community's heritage and identity, a familiar and valued place that strengthens local pride and connection.
Thanks, Councillor Hayden. Anyone else like to talk to this one, either way, for or against? Councillor Kaji.
Yeah, thanks, Mayor. I'd like to ask a question. Why did we embark on this survey or review?
I think councillor councillor Lang spoke to that. I'm not sure what that date was, but
That was in January.
in January.
Anyway, I'm asking the question, why did we do it?
Because
And I'd like an answer, because we've spent 18 months to 2 years on this, and I don't know what it's cost us in dollars, our ratepayers, to come up with a zero result. Because of our asset sustainability, what this was all about. Our financial position within council, and the fact that we know that we need to reduce our assets to be sustainable into the future. We know we had to make some hard decisions. So I want someone to explain to me and the general public out there why we went down this path, expended all these funds and time and energy and resources for a nil result. I'd like someone to explain that to me and the general public, please.
I'm happy to speak to that. So councillor Lang actually spoke to that a short time ago and said that despite external advice, it was a request made of staff.
So look, councillor Cardew, council made a decision in January to do the review. Council officers have done an enormous amount of work, talking first to council staff, also then engaging with community. Councillors have engaged significantly with community, and the response from those communities that felt like they were under threat has really been overwhelming. And you know, we go back to the decision we made in January, when we also had advice from CT Consulting, don't mess with libraries, because the gain you get from cutting your library services compared to the harm and disruption you cause to the community, they don't really match up. There's no argument. Council libraries do not cost us a mozza. They do not cost us a mozza. If you look at what we spend on libraries and what we spend on other, you know, what we'd spend on one road could be our whole library's budget. What we spend on one road. So what this exercise has done for me, it shows that this council has listened to the community. It shows that this council has maturity, because we made a decision to do the review of libraries, and it wasn't a fait accompli. We weren't doing a review because we'd already made a decision to cut libraries. We were doing a review because we wanted to do a review. And now that we've got all the information that's come in, it doesn't really stack up from the community perspective. It doesn't stack up. I mean, you know, we look at the investment in libraries and the community benefit that we all are fully aware of now. This is a mature council making a decision that reflects the community response, and it does weigh up our cost. Everything costs money, and everyone wants council to provide more. We thought we could make some savings here, but when we found out what the community felt about libraries, and we looked at our investment in libraries, which is modest, we decided that we're better to fall in the favour of community, because that's where the real value is. So I think it's a sign of a mature council. We commissioned the review. Staff did an enormous amount of work, copped a lot of flack from some parts of the community because the community was affronted by it. So staff had to deal with that. Then councillors copped hundreds of emails. We had deputations from the towns, and this is where we've landed. And so this is council listening to the information and making a decision. So that's the way I see it. So where are we? We've got a motion on the screen. We've got it moved and seconded, councillor Hayden and councillor Lang. Does anyone else need to talk to this? Those in favour? Carried, that's 6-1. Councillor Tarragona. I think we'll do. Yeah. So councillors, that one's taken a while. We might take an early morning tea break and we'll come back and be fresh for the next one. Okay, councillors, we'll reconvene. And it was remiss of me, but on 14.2 there was one more item over the page that I missed, and that was item 7. Delegate to the Chief Executive Officer the authority to do all things necessary to implement the approved recommendations, including the outcomes of all reviews. So we've got one more item there we need to move on. Can I have a mover of that 7th item to empower the CEO to do that? Councillor Barty's moving and Councillor Hayden is seconding. Those in favour? Carried. That's 7. Thank you. Okay, so that now brings us back to our published agenda. And the next item on that agenda is policies for adoption, 11.2. I'll hand over to the CEO. Oh, sorry, Yvette. I'll hand over to Yvette. Thank you.
Good morning, councillors, and through the chair, I'm pleased to present this report. TRC officers have reviewed key policies in line with feedback from regulatory bodies and external advisors, and the reviewed policies and one new policy presented to council for adoption. Regarding the council contact with consultants, developers and submitters policy, previous policy was adopted in September 2024. 12 months after its implementation, it's timely to review its efficacy and to make amendments in line with advice received from external advisors and agencies. Specifically, some of the wording has been amended to reflect the model policy document developed for the LGAQ and is recommended by external advisors to council. It's recognised that councillors play an important role in the development assessment process and the making of TRC's planning policy. It's also expected that councillors will have some level of interaction with developers, their consultants and or submitters on planning and development related matters. But this does present challenges when councillors are also involved in the decision-making process in relation to these applications. Thus, amendments have been made to assist to reduce the risk of councillors being placed in situations that could give rise to a declarable conflict of interest that may prevent them being involved in the discussion or voting on a matter at a council meeting. Specifically, the amendments clarify the framework for councillor interactions with project proponents and or submitters during each phase of the development proposal. That is, from the pre-application stage through to the appeal or any appeal. This ensures that any interactions are compliant with obligations under planning legislation and are appropriate and also in the public interest. Also of significance throughout the policy is the removal of references to councillor interactions with lobbyists. This is because a separate councillor and staff interaction with lobbyist policy has been developed. The need for this new policy was recognised because councillors are not the only ones who have interactions with lobbyists. Consequently, the provisions from the previous policy that related to interactions with lobbyists have been separated and the application broadened to also include TRC officers. This new policy will assist councillors and officers to understand and comply with their obligations when interacting with lobbyists, reducing risks associated with improper lobbying. It will provide clear guidance for managing and documenting contact with lobbyists in accordance with the requirements under the Integrity Act of 2009 and the Public Records Act of 2023. It will also promote greater transparency regarding interactions with lobbyists, assist with reporting on lobbying activities to senior management and or the Integrity Commissioner, and also aid in informal monitoring of corruption risks and compliance with relevant procedures. The content of this policy is not covered under any existing council policy. The third policy under consideration is the Exceptional Request Guidelines policy. Section 170, capital A of the Local Government Act provides that a councillor may ask a local government employee to provide advice to assist the councillor in carrying out their responsibilities under the Act. and they can also seek information relating to the local government. The revised policy sets out what councillors may ask particular TRC officers. The list of officers has been updated to ensure that councillors obtain appropriate information and advice from staff who are in the best position to provide such information or advice. Specifically, the listing has been updated to raise the officer level considered appropriate to receive councillor requests to managers and to reflect current officer roles within TRC's updated organisational structure. Specifically, in terms of requests are to be made to the appropriate manager, executive manager or general manager and copied to the CEO. Requests may be made verbally but must be followed up in writing, and councillors are required to provide reasons for seeking the advice or access to the information. The response provided by officers must ensure that the councillor is provided access to all relevant information, as well as any other information necessary to place the advice or the information that is being accessed into context. To be clear, this policy does not limit non-business related interactions between councillors and TRC officers, whether they be in a social setting or in the workplace. This drafting is also based on the Standard Acceptable Request Guidelines policy document that was developed for LGAQ members and is not more onerous or burdensome than the policies adopted by other Queensland local governments. I now invite the CEO to make comment and answer any questions.
Does anyone have any questions about the policies?
Are we considering these individually?
Yes.
Yeah, when we're
Individually,
voting for them? Okay, great. With the acceptable request guidelines, on page 23, they indicate the reasons for seeking advice or access to the info that we have to include in our request. Isn't that already covered by the Local Government Act, that councillors are allowed to ask these questions? Like, why do we have to justify actually everything that we're asking?
It's just to provide context, sorry if I may through the chair. It's to provide context for the specifics of a request, because council officers may otherwise think that it would be provided for one reason, but it could actually be that you are delving into other aspects and things. So to provide that context, council officers may then be aware of other information that might provide some additional, they may be able to pass on to councillors to provide additional context, which can provide a more holistic response.
Example?
I could probably give you a very good example. So if you are asking for information about something that is actually relevant to someone who's asked you something, council officers might not be aware of that. They may provide you with confidential information that is not for further sharing. So if you just say you email, and this came recently, if you email and say so-and-so has approached me for information about X, Y, Z, it alerts council officers that they have to be really clear, because you should assume everything coming back from a council officer is confidential.
I do assume that, and that's why if I'm going to share with community, I ask, like I say, is this, yeah, so.
Well, then it shouldn't be an issue for you, because if you're already providing that level of detail, it won't be an issue for you. So if you're actually emailing and saying, I'd like this information for this purpose, then this doesn't create any extra work for you because you're already doing it.
Councillor Bill.
Yeah, through the chair. Couple of things. First thing is a comment. I think the acceptable request guideline policy is legally compliant. There's no doubt about that. But myself, I think it's a little bit operationally rigid, rightly or wrongly. I guess I'm okay with getting information from the management, but there is certain times when you are getting emails from staff for various reasons. Now, I'm just concerned about that interaction, how that plays into this, where, you know, we're not outwardly going to staff beyond that management level, but if we're receiving stuff from below, what position does that put us in, I guess, is my answer.
Absolutely, it's a really good thing. So some of the reasons that support you endorsing this is, one, it's based on external expert advice. Two, it brings us to the standard that's consistent with nearly every other local government in Queensland. So if you're departing from this and going below, you really need to think about what is it that makes this council special across all those other tiers that this council would do something different. Three, there's a significant power imbalance between you and staff. At manager level, GM level and CEO level, there's an expectation, so we have it built into things like our KPIs and our performance agreements, that we have to respond to you. When you're going below that, you're asking people at a lower level to respond. I see the emails back and they often apologise because they haven't set aside their work and responded to you quicker. And that's sort of a current theme. The other thing to be mindful of is below manager level, we have staff sitting in roles that do not have the formal qualifications that you would think would be relevant for that role. Might be in compliance where they're not engineers and you're asked, or builders or building certifiers or planners, could be in the planning area, it's certainly in the engineering area, it's certainly in compliance. So when you're asking for information from a person below a manager level, they often don't have the delegation to provide that information externally, and they're often not qualified to actually provide you with formal advice or information. But they may feel pressured to do that, and so that's something I've consistently heard. If you are having a staff member reach out, you've got to think about your my first thought, and we had a conversation earlier, my first thought is you've got to consider if what they're saying to you might be a public interest disclosure. So you are a property authority under the Public Interest Disclosures Act. So just say, for example, you've got someone below manager level, they ring you or they email you and they say, hey, I've seen this on that. You are interested in a particular road. What I saw was this going on. What they may be alerting you to is wrongdoing. So you've got to put your hat on. They may not realise that. So we're talking about potential corrupt conduct and those kinds of things. They may not realise that, but you've got to put your proper authority hat on, listen to what they say and think, could this be something that meets the public interest, what would be considered a public interest disclosure? Take some details down, but immediately liaise with Yvette about the nature of that disclosure. So if they're ringing, they might be complaining about, in general, it could be the price of something paid, it could be a procurement amount. It could be that they're just following up something because they think it's of interest to you, but the information they might provide to you could indicate wrongdoing. So if you are getting those, and we want to encourage that. So we want people, and members of the community as well, you're still a proper authority, so they don't have to be a staff member. But the first thing to think about is someone is saying something to you, listen to what they're saying, and then think about, has that triggered your obligations under the Public Disclosures Act? So that's something to think about first. This will not stop your general conversations and your day-to-day, but what it will make sure is that the person with the relevant qualifications and experience is providing guidance to you. And we've seen that. I know I've had conversations with different councillors just in the last couple of weeks where we have seen someone that is not qualified. They've gone, and it's just by happenstance, whether they've CC'd me in, all those kinds of things, but it does certainly create an issue, and there is a power imbalance. So for acceptable request guidelines, and even for the lobbying is not necessarily just about development. Lobbyists work for a range of different companies, and which is why part of the reason why it's now separated out. I have found myself in a position where I was being lobbied with the mayor, but for the fact that I asked whether the person was a lobbyist, we would not have known that we were actually being lobbied and we needed to report it. And certainly, even while I've been here, I've been offered bribes. So it's really important. So some of these policies will not only protect you, but they also apply to staff, and we will be we're already obliged to follow them, but this makes it very, very clear.
Councillors, any more questions? Councillor Hayden.
So in page 2 of one of the documents, it says, submit it to the appropriate manager, executive or gentleman and copy to the CEO. Isn't that not, if the manager's able to answer it without you being copied into everything?
Yeah, look, I don't mind if I'm not copied in, but what staff are doing...
Compulsory though.
It's in part because my obligation is to manage the well-being of the staff. What I have heard consistently from staff is that they do feel overwhelmed by the amount of requests in particular areas. You will often do a request and you don't realise that that same staff member might have come into work with a line of things to do, and then suddenly there might be 3 or 4 emails from different councillors. So you're not all copied into the different emails, but I'm actually monitoring the amount of requests that goes out. So it's not necessary, but it is useful because then I can also see the information that's going to you. A very recent example was the Medley Road permanent closure. No, it has not been permanently closed, but we had someone below manager level sort of in an email that was shared with you, and then luckily Mark and I were CC'd in, where there was a suggestion of that, and it caused a great deal of confusion amongst you as councillors, but it also caused a lot of confusion and angst in the community. So it does protect staff, but it also makes sure that the information going to you is accurate and complete and consistent with that person's experience and qualifications. I did see one yesterday that advice went back to a councillor. It was outside of the scope of that person's qualifications. They were well below manager level, and then if you are subsequently relying on that, you've got no hope. But it puts staff in a difficult predicament, whereas all of our managers are might be whether they're engineers or etc. have the relevant qualifications. Same things happen with legal and governance. Just because someone sits next to Yvette does not mean that they're a lawyer, but we are having junior staff pressured to essentially, whether it's provide legal opinions or engineering opinions or planning opinions or all those kinds of things, road opinions. So this just sort of makes it much cleaner.
This is from councillors?
Yes, yeah, because you wouldn't be aware of who's got what qualifications in the different roles. You see them in a role, you think, well, they must be qualified because that role sounds like, or that area does X, Y, Z. They're often don't have delegations under the different acts. So ordinarily that any work going outside is actually checked to make sure by a suitably qualified person. But I think the key point is, this is external advice to council is this and this template. What has happened here, the current practices are a substantial departure from what nearly every single other local government in Queensland is doing. So if you do not want to do what other local governments are doing, I think, or what the external advice has recommended, then I think then you need some, and certainly what staff are saying, you certainly need some reasons for that, but ultimately you will be taking those risks on yourself. It's probably not dissimilar to the library where you've got external advice, they said don't. Anyway, you end up here and it's still don't.
Councillor Hayden.
Question. Okay, so that's, I don't know who your manager is, I don't know executive manager, I know what the two general managers are, and I know who the CEO is. So how do we know that we're not sending it to the wrong person? Because we're changing our managers every second day.
Oh no, do you know, most of our managers have been in place for, it's only the third GM role that we've advertised. Most of our managers have been in place, we've had some that have been reclassified as managers, but in general there has not been a lot of turnaround at manager level.
I still don't know who your managers are.
Oh no, we're happy to, we can actually give you an org structure and their details and their email addresses, etc. While the general manager's position for placemaking is not filled, so we have Kelly and Peter authorised to, they have the delegations and they are well placed and well qualified to talk about any planning and development matters and also compliance within that team. But I'm happy to provide a copy of the org structure with the names, and when our new GM starts, we'll pop their name in as well.
Councillor Billman.
Through the chair, I recall a conversation we had last week. I went to the disaster forum and you went to the governance. Correct. And I believe this actually came up.
This was at governance.
And can you just remind the other councillors what was there? There was only, yeah.
Would you like me to speak to that?
You can speak to it.
Point of order, Mr. Mayor. I thought this was a question time only. I think we're going to discuss and debate it in open session. This is just for questions.
This is a question, and I'm happy to answer it.
I haven't heard a question from.
Did you ask me what happened at that governance session?
What happened at that governance, because I wasn't there.
Yeah, so it was probably the fuller of the session. So we had, there probably would have been about 40 different local governments represented there, from large to small. It was a governance and legal session. The specific question came up about what level the acceptable request guidelines go down into other councils. They were generally all at CEO level only or GM. There were a couple of councils that went to manager level. There was only one other council, a much smaller council, that went below that level, and they said it was because they They've got a very high level of trust between the councillors and the staff. It's a very small council. And we were essentially the only ones, in addition to that one single one. So that's probably a good example of how significant a departure it is from what other local governments across Queensland are doing. And there's a reason for that. So, and I've stated those reasons, as has Yvette, and you also received information in that workshop by an external party expert.
Yeah, look, and just following on from Councillor Bilney's question, you know, when you cut through it all, it protects us more as councillors. We're getting the best information from the officer at the right level, which is really important, you know, because when we're asking for information, we've got to be absolutely confident that it's as accurate as it can be. And it also protects the officer, who can easily be overwhelmed by dealing with the councillor, you know, and especially those ones, you know, the further down they are, the more overwhelming or challenging it is for them if they're getting an inquiry from us and feel like they've got to respond quickly. Do we have any more questions for either the CEO or Yvette? Councillor Barty?
We've just been talking about acceptable request guidelines, is that right? I've got some questions about the other policies as well. So with the contacting developers and submitters, on page 40, 42 and 43, it's got, sorry, I'll just get the words right. To refer to the CEO or delegate, and everywhere that it's been sort of executive manager of development, it's crossed out and it's got CEO. Why are we not using the manager of placemaking in that position?
Oh, the general manager of placemaking?
Yeah.
It will become the general manager of placemaking.
Well, we refer to that position elsewhere, but not here. How come?
This policy talks about the CEO in the first instance or their delegate. And
Or the delegate, so the general manager of placemaking will be the delegate.
Well, why don't we just say general manager of placemaking?
I can update them. This was actually originally drafted prior to the new structure actually being public. So
Yeah, that would be, it just seems a bit strange.
Councillors, any more questions?
Any questions on the lobbying policy? Any questions?
Yeah, on any of the policy documents? Okay, so do we have a mover of the number 1, which is the acceptable request guidelines? I've lost the page now. Do we have a mover? Councillor Lamb's moving. Resolve to adopt the acceptable request guidelines policy. Councillor Lang's moving. Do we have a seconder? Councillor Spanos, thank you. Councillor Lang.
I'm happy with the explanation that we've given.
Thank you. Councillor Spanos?
I have nothing.
Anyone like to talk for or against this one? Councillor Barty?
I'll be speaking against. I'm not supporting this change today. I've gone back through my emails and looked at the people that helped me the most perform my role in the community. I'm putting my questions and queries in through the executive assistant, and when I get comments back from members of staff and I've got follow-up questions, I generally do have that conversation with them. I find that really beneficial, and I think that this policy will restrict my ability to seek that help and information from people that I most often interact with, and this reduces my ability to perform the role for which I've been elected.
Thanks, Councillor Barty. Anyone else like to talk to this one? Councillor Cardew?
Yeah, thanks, Mayor. Yeah, I agree 100% with what Councillor Barty just said. I won't be supporting it either. As a councillor, I feel that our roles are being diminished further and further, and I keep getting regular comments from the general public. I mean, what are you there for? What's the good of you? You know, what do you do? You know, so and I love to have an interaction with some of the staff, and I'm not talking about the level of staff that are in here. So all these staff have managerial roles, and they should be able to perform those managerial roles in accordance with their code of conduct and all these policies and things without fear or favour. And I haven't heard of any retaliation from staff when I've been talking to them. So I'm definitely not supporting this. I want to be able to talk to those levels that were that's in the current policy. That current policy was put in place not long ago for this very reason, what Councillor Bay just said. And there's no way that I'll be supporting to change it. And if this doesn't get up, I'll be putting up a motion to retain the existing policy.
Thanks, Councillor Cardew. Councillors? Final call. Councillor Lang, would you like to? No? Okay, we've got a mover and seconder of the acceptable request guidelines. Those in favour? Carried. That's 5. Councillor Vardy and Councillor Cardew. Jackie, thank you. Item 2, resolve to adopt the councillor contact with consultants, developers and submitters policy. Do we have a mover of the officer's recommendation? Councillor Bilney's moving. Do we have a seconder? Councillor Lang, thank you. Councillor Bilney.
Nothing from me, Mr Mayor.
Councillor Lang. Councillors. Councillor Cardew.
Okay, thanks, Mayor. I won't be supporting this one either. Again, I believe that the existing policy is more than adequate, and I won't be supporting this again.
Thank you. Councillor Vardy.
I'm not supporting it either. There's just a few things in there that I feel just making that hard job a bit harder. Like this, state that the council's principal obligation is to serve the public interest by ensuring that the decision is consistent with planning legislation. And we're supposed to say that every time somebody seeks a question from us. I think it's burdensome, and I liked the old policy, and I accepted the old policy.
Thank you.
Do you want to speak to that? I'm happy to speak to that. So under the Planning Act, you can only take particular factors into account. You're also the assessment manager as well. So if you are doing things like engaging with the developer or someone who may be a submitter. So when I talk about submitters, it's anyone who might submit, whether it's a code, accessible or impact. When I'm talking about formal submissions, I'm talking about a written submission in relation to impact accessible that gives them appeal rights. In some cases, the emails I have received, the councillors are advocating a particular position, whether it's for a developer or a submitter, and that's not your role. You need to stay independent, base your decision in this room about the information provided by the planning team and engineering team who will have properly assessed it, and then make sure that in this room you make a decision in the public interest based on the relevant factors that you can take into account under the Planning Act. This just makes it much cleaner. Where I see those interactions, I am required to report it. So if I see something and I've got to remember my reporting threshold is very, very low. If I see something and it looks like you may be advocating or on behalf of a developer or a submitter, I need to alert your attention to that. Or if you're making requests on behalf of a landowner. Because certainly for the development space, this is the key corruption risk area in local governments. And primarily, if you're thinking about New South Wales and Victoria, Tasmania, it's already off local governments. So in some jurisdictions, it's such a corruption-prone area that they are looking at taking it away from councillors. Because you are prone to being influenced, and you also have to take steps like making sure you've got a file note, etc. This will give the public confidence that what you're doing is fully above board, so you don't have to protect or defend yourselves, because I frequently receive complaints about whether it's interactions with developers, because that's just the nature of the development. They'll always think that there's a councillor somewhere that's biased or acting in someone's interest, etc. If you are emailing staff, those should be part of the public materials, and you've got to think, well, if I'm emailing staff about particular developments, what will the public think, or the developer or a submitter against, because they are part of the common materials, and we can publish those on the website. And I think if you're a member of the public and you're seeing a councillor who seems to be acting in the interest of a particular party that's relevant to a development application, well, then that gives rise to concerns by members of the public that you may have been influenced. Remember, they don't have to prove it. It could just be a perception. So this just makes it all a lot cleaner and essentially keeps you the level of independence we need for you to be able to make independent decisions when that application comes to council, and once you've received all of the materials that are relevant to that application. If there is an application before council and you want some information about it, I've sort of spoken to you. If the team can do a simple summary, but I have said to you as councillors that information should be shared with all councillors so that you each have all of the materials that every councillor has been provided with, because I wouldn't like you to come to a meeting here, be thinking about application and one of you or two of you to have more information about that application. So that's a process that I've introduced elsewhere, and that would be a process that I'd be introducing here. So you really need to come here with the same level of information, with the same level of independence, and then make your decision based on the assessment reports that are coming to you, which are done by suitably qualified professionals, whether they're engineers or planners, including our external consultants, and then make your decision according to the way that an assessment manager would. So this just tidies that all up.
Councillor Spanos.
Through the chair, I'm happy with how you explained yourself at resolving to adopt the acceptable request guidelines. I'm happy with that. You explained that other LGAs go through the same process.
Every LGA.
Okay, except for us.
Well, we've departed in that we allow it to happen to a lower level, a much lower level.
You did say we were one of the ones that...
One of the few.
Well, okay, one of the few then. As far as resolving to adopt, section 2 there, I still feel that I'm comfortable listening to developers when they come to me and ask me for some, not so much advice.
Yeah, we don't, and you don't provide advice.
I don't.
No.
But I'm happy with them to come and speak with me because they're my constituents. If they want to come and speak to me about something, then I will come and speak to the council about that. Now, a perfect example of that is Manti Road. If you look at Manti Road there, what a debacle that was. Yeah. What's happened there? I've just gotten back, and honestly, I cannot believe that that has actually happened, that they shut off Manti Road. How did that happen? How did we miss that?
Exactly. And I'll fill you in on that later.
But you just made the statement that our GMs, our executive officers are all over this. And
we are. And the confusion arose because there was a request to someone below manager level who suggested it would be a good idea to close the road working with the developer. No, we're not. The road, anyone listening, the road is not permanently closed, but that was a good example of someone below a manager level making comment, and it caused an awful lot of confusion. In terms of this is a policy that's, similar policies are adopted at every local government level. They're much more stringent in other councils where there is a lot of development. For example, Toowoomba, extremely highly regulated. You do not have a councillor emailing any of the planning team ever on behalf of an applicant, on behalf of a submitter, ever. Any question they have goes through council business. It goes to the GM and the GM only. They're provided with the summary, and the summary is shared to every councillor. So the level of interaction here is not consistent with what happens at other councils. This will basically set the policy standards so we are consistent with what other councils do, and that's probably been the issue across these policies. They did not represent best practice or current practices in other councils. So this is lifting that standard up. But particularly under the Planning Act, you did have a workshop with an external expert who spoke about these kinds of matters. You may remember that a few weeks ago, or a few months ago now. This is consistent with the expert advice to council laws. And you've had two different experts provide advice in relation to this space. But you can absolutely, you can meet with if you want to meet with a developer, absolutely. Make sure you do a file note to protect yourself. I am frequently have been engaged in investigations where developers will claim that a councillor has made a promise. The exact thing you just said, you meet with the development and then you'll bring it back and discuss it with councillors. No, that's called advocating for the developer. You can't.
I'm not advocating.
No, but if you bring it back and say, a developer said to me X, Y, Z, if you've got an application underway it's being assessed across council. So they can meet with you, and then it might be that when you have the decision before you might reflect on what they said, but you shouldn't allow yourself to be influenced. You should make sure you read the materials.
I think we're clever enough to be able to do that.
I'm sorry, but you're not meant to be clever in this space. You're not an engineer, development assessment engineer. You're not a planner. So how will you know if you're being, it's one thing to listen to someone, but if you're then advocating on their behalf and saying you think a particular condition is unfair or unreasonable, etc., or discussing it with other councillors, you don't want to be doing that. Because the first question I would say is, have you received a bribe of some kind? Why are you doing that? And remember, I was the one who was having to do this at local government level for the first time in 2018 post Belcara review. Please go back and read the Belcara review. Most of that CCC investigation was about interactions between councillors and developers. So and there was a second review after that, so please go back and read that, and then you'll understand why it's important to have some really strong guidelines in place.
So yeah, it's pretty clear at the conference, the CCC's full of planning and development matters. The CCC, that's what they're dealing with all the time. It's a big volume of stuff.
And always.
So it's a really high risk area. It's a high risk area for council.
But if I'm going out to meetings and people are brazen enough to offer me a bribe, like that's really brazen. And Mark, I might like bribes too. That's really brazen. So this is a way to make sure that you're protected as well, because we want to protect you until such time as you're ready to make that decision, and you make that decision based on the assessments done by suitable, qualified internal and external experts. So it's really just about keeping yourself and any perception about what you're doing clean above board, so that there can be no questions asked.
Final call for questions. Anyone? We've got a mover and seconder of the motion. Anyone like to talk to it again? Okay. Those in favour? Carried. That's 4-3. So that's Councillor Barty, Councillor Spanos, and Councillor Tarju. Okay, item 3. Resolve to adopt the councillor and officer contact with lobbyist policy. Do we have a mover of the officer's recommendation? Councillor Lang. Seconder. Councillor Bilney. Councillor Lang, would you like to?
No,
Anyone like to talk to this one? Yeah, look, it can happen in a completely innocent way, but yeah, the investigation authorities won't view it that way when it happens. But yeah, I was with the CEO and we sat down in a cafe with a couple of people, and it was only when the CEO asked who this particular fellow was and who he worked for that we realised we were sitting with a lobbyist. So these things can happen, yeah, very easily. So.
And we were being lobbied to give them work.
So, so yeah. Anyone like to talk to this one? Okay. We've got a mover and seconder. Those in favour? Carried. That's 4-3. Councillor Spanos, Councillor Barty, and Councillor Tarju. Okay, item 4, delegate the authority to the Chief Executive Officer in accordance with section 257 1B of the Local Government Act 2009 to develop and amend any associated procedures, guidelines and other documents relevant to adopted policies. Can we have a mover, thanks? Councillor Lang is moving. And seconder? Councillor Bilney? Those in favour? Carried. That's 5-2. That was Councillor Spanos and Councillor Cardew. Okay, councillors, that's 11.2 done. 11.3, Tableland Local Disaster Management Plan. Who's talking? Thanks, Yvette. Over to you, please.
Thank you, Mayor. Through the chair, I'm pleased to present this report. It is a requirement of the Disaster Management Act 2003 that all local governments review the effectiveness of their local disaster management plans on an annual basis. TRC officers have reviewed an updated plan, as have member organisations of the Local Disaster Management Group. The LDMG considered the updated draft at their 15 October 2025 meeting, and it's now presented to Council for endorsement. Following adoption by Council, it will be made publicly available on Council's website. No substantive changes have been made. Administrative updates have occurred, including those related to TRC's new CEO. Relevant links have been updated, as has statistical information and updates aligned with the state government machinery of government changes. Thank you.
Thanks, Yvette. Any questions for Yvette? Councillor Cardew, and then we'll come to Councillor Lang.
Yvette, are there any changes to this to the previous one?
As I said, nothing substantive in terms of its content. It's merely updated, updates to things like statistics. Names of state government agencies have changed with the last state government election, so those have been updated. Statistical information and also references to the CEO now being Nicola rather than the previous CEO.
But there's no change to how we assist people immediately after an event, and there's no change in the way communications are carried out during an event.
That is correct. That is my
It's
understanding.
improved from the previous. No change at all.
It has been flagged, if I may, through the chair, that a more substantive review may be conducted with next year's review to look at the not only the structure of the document but its content to align it with best practice.
Any more questions, councillors? Sorry, Councillor Lang.
I don't have a question, more of a correction. On page 7, there's no acronym for SES. And on page 31, there's an extra comma after Molander, obviously where Herberton was removed. So that's just a pity, sorry.
Thank you very much.
I did read it, thank you.
I'll ensure those updates are carried through.
Thanks, Councillor Lang. Questions, councillors? Yeah, look, the only thing I'd say is I'd just like to thank Sarah and the team there in the disaster management space in this building, who've done an amazing job here, and we shouldn't forget.
Mr.
that.
Mayor, point of order. I thought this was for questions only.
Good point. Good point. So I'll withdraw that, and I'll ask for a mover and seconder. So Councillor Lang moving, Councillor Bilney seconding. Councillor Lang?
No, I'm happy with that.
Councillor Bilney?
Yeah, through the chair, I think it's important to note that this document was peer reviewed by the members of the LDMG who endorsed it to come to council. So it's just not councillors that are endorsing it. It has previously been passed by that group. So I think that's important to note.
Thanks very much. Anyone else like to talk to this one? Councillor Cardew?
Thanks, Mayor. I won't be supporting it. After every event, the main issues that come out after the preview or the meetings to determine what went wrong, what can be done better, every single time communications come up as top number one issue during an event, no matter what it is. And this document hasn't reflected or addressed those issues, and that this issue is raised every single time after an event, and nothing's been changed to improve it. So, and the other thing is, I didn't support this last time, and I won't be supporting it again, because the assistance that we don't provide people immediately after an event to help them is appalling. So nothing's changed. I won't be supporting it.
Can I ask a question? So if there have been concerns raised about communication, so this actually went to LDMG, the committee, and they voted on it. So the representatives there at the very high level, Queensland Police, Queensland Fire Department, State Emergency Services, Queensland Health, have I left anyone out? So at the highest level, it was reviewed and approved by them. So they're the actual the members here. If there is a communication, has it been raised formally with the LDMG? If you've got issues here, how has that been raised so that LDMG can consider it?
This has been raised on numerous occasions following events that we've been briefed on.
As in to LDMG?
By our, what do you call it? Senior Advisor of Emergency Management.
And so it's been raised at LDMG
It's been raised
level?
multiple times, and nothing has changed.
Well, you're obviously the chair of LDMG. It may be that you go back to LDMG, but in terms of these particular materials, they were endorsed unanimously by the voting members of the LDMG.
Thanks, Councillor Cardew. Anyone else like to talk to this? We have a mover and seconder. Those in favour? Carried. That's 6-1. Thank you. Councillor Cardew.
Thank you, Mayor.
So that brings us to 12.1, placemaking. Kayleen Collins and Colin Grove, care of UNI Town Plan, material change of use, short-term accommodation, 3-bedroom dwelling, lot 84 on RP 838260, 147 Wallace Road, Glen Allen, MCU 25/0016. I'll hand over to Peter to talk to that one. Thanks.
Thanks, Mr. Mayor. This application, councillor, seeks approval for material change of use to allow the existing 3-bedroom dwelling to be used for short-term accommodation. The site's on a 2,900 square metre rural lifestyle property located within the rural zone, and it's in the general rural precinct. The proposal is considered to be small scale, accommodating a maximum of 6 guests at a time, and does not involve any new buildings or external works. The use will operate in a manner consistent with the dwelling house, and it is considered to be compatible with the surrounding rural properties without impacting agricultural activity, rural operations, or the scenic and rural character of the locality. The property is serviced by an existing on-site water supply and wastewater disposal system, and access and parking areas are already available on site. Recommended conditions seek to ensure that these arrangements continue and remain unchanged. The application was subject to impact assessment and no submissions were received during the public notification period. Draft conditions that have been recommended have been provided to the applicant and have been agreed upon. Overall, the proposal is considered to be consistent with the strategic and zone outcomes sought for the rural zone, which supports low impact tourism activity across the region. The application has been recommended for approval subject to conditions.
Thanks very much. Do we have any questions? Councillor Barty?
Hi Peter, I'm Marie Wintermate. My question relates to noise restrictions and events on the property, where I know there's a lot of short-term rentals that aren't sort of processed in this way, and there's been some noise complaints and events that lawfully conducted. So I was just wondering what ensures the serenity of the people surrounding this property.
Thank you, Councillor. Through the chair. The proposal that has been presented to council is for a 6-person occupancy of the dwelling house. It doesn't include wedding events such as weddings, which I'm familiar with, that are occurring across the region and causing great impact to communities. Should those events or this proposal morph into something more than has been presented to council and as part of the scope of the application, then that will be subject to a compliance investigation process by council. If it does eventuate, it's a tricky one to get to the what if that happens. Recommended conditions seek to ensure that attendance registers and guest registers are maintained and provided to council at the request of council officers, which does provide that safeguard, if you like, for future compliance investigation purposes. But to answer your question, no, it doesn't include, it's not an event centre, it's not a wedding venue, it's not a recreational centre. It is to be within these realms and scope of what is considered to be consistent with a dwelling house.
So if members of the public who are affected by something that happens at this venue, should they contact council and make a complaint? Is that the best way to, if something does happen? I'm sure it won't. It sounds totally legit. But yeah.
Through the chair, thank you, councillor. Standard noise complaint processes would prevail and be retained throughout that process. If the land use becomes more than the land use that has been recommended or proposed within this application, then that's a council process, such as regular functions occurring at the site. But if it is just the domestic noise and complaints around those aspects, then it could be a police matter or it could become a council matter, depending on the nature of the matter occurring.
All right, thank you.
Any more questions? Do we have a mover of the officer's recommendation? Councillor Barty's moving. And a seconder? Councillor Spanos? Councillor Barty?
I just want to say that thank you to the applicants for going through the proper process with this. So that's all I'd like to say.
Anyone else like to talk to this one? Those in favour? Carried, that's 7. Okay, item 12.2, Energia Property Holdings Proprietary Limited, other change to material change of use for shop and shopping centre, lot 5, RPA 857661, 70 Grigg Street, Ravenshoe, MCU 24/0021. I might hand over to you, Peter, for that one. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. This item relates to a change application to what has been approved as a shopping centre and shops at 70 Grigg Street in Ravenshoe. Council approved a supermarket and 2 specialty tenancies on this site just a little over 2 years ago. The application is now seeking to amend this approval to reflect a single tenancy arrangement. We understand that's come about through the more commercial arrangements in place, that a single tenancy is more viable for the site rather than having a supermarket and 2 specialty tenancies at the front. The key changes to the approved development include increasing the floor area from 1,000 square metres to 1,200 square metres, removing the 2 smaller tenancies at the front, and reducing the on-site car parking spaces from 43 spaces to 37 spaces. And this has primarily been or arisen as a result of accommodating an articulated vehicle, so a semi-trailer for delivery. So previously there was some conflicts with movement, so by removing the spaces and having them clearly delineated as for truck movement, that has resulted in a reduction in spaces. The application was an impact accessible application and underwent public notification. No submissions were received during that public notification period. The revised design is considered to still be consistent with the intent of the planning scheme and supports Ravenshoe's role as a rural service centre. No unacceptable impacts have been identified through the course of the assessment, and the proposal is considered to remain consistent to the site. The request is supported by updated conditions primarily relating to car parking and the references to shop being removed, and that has also resulted in an updated infrastructure charges notice being issued as well. Mr. Mayor.
Yeah. Any questions, councillors, for Peter? Councillor Barty?
Peter, the stormwater runoff from the back of the site goes towards North Cedar Creek. Is there any requirement for pollution traps or filters to prevent erosion stuff going through?
Thank you, councillor. And through that, just quickly review the existing conditions of approval. The amendments that have been proposed don't relate to stormwater quality or management. However, I will just, if I may indulge you for a moment, councillor, I may just check the existing conditions to confirm.
I can take it on notice if
that's okay.
Yeah, that's okay. Yeah.
Thanks very much. Any other questions, councillors? Do we have a mover of the officer's recommendation? Councillor Spanos and Councillor Hayden. Thank you. Would you like to talk to that, Councillor Spanos? Yeah, Councillor Hayden.
No, that's fine.
Anyone like to talk to this one? Those in favour? Carried, that's 7. Thanks very much. Councillor Billing, I'm just going to take a bathroom break. Can you just take over?
Yeah, sure.
From 12.3. Thank you.
So 12.3 relates to the development activity report, Q1 for 25-26, July to September 2025. Peter, can I ask you to provide some information behind that report?
Thank you, Mr Deputy Mayor. This report, as has been raised, is the Q1, so July through September development update to councillors. Of notice, we continue to see increasing development activity within the region, with 52 new lots created over the course of Q1, and 25 lots approved and 44 new dwellings approved, which is fantastic to see. We haven't received any applications under Council's investment incentive policy over this period. And we have also received 163 lot of applications combined, totaling 163 lots across Yungaburra and Atherton, which we understand from development responsible industry is a result of Council's latest infrastructure charges resolution. So it has, if you like, brought forward some potential applications across the region. Any other questions?
Yeah, thanks, Peter. Councillors, any questions of Peter? No, if there's no other questions, we've got a mover, Kylie and Tom, sorry, Councillor Lang and Councillor Spanos. No, he's asked me. Those in favour? 6-0. We'll note on there that the Mayor took a leave of absence. Also, Mr Mayor, I'll hand back to you.
Thanks very much. 12.3 is done, is it?
Yes.
Thank you. Okay, that brings us to infrastructure and environment. Item 13.1, community project request, Better Together Community Support Inc. Community Garden Phase 2 CRM 25/10467. And Tanya here, so I'll hand over to you, Tanya. Thank you.
Thank you. Good morning, councillors, and through the chair. I'm pleased to present this report to council for a community project request for Better Together Community Support Incorporated for Phase 2 of their community garden installation at their Robert Street, Atherton location. This community project request, or CPR, is further to a CPR for Phase 1 of the community garden that was approved by council in July 2024. On the 9th of July 2025, TRC received this second CPR from Better Together, presenting a revised community garden plan that holds an estimated value of $19,360, which is to be fully funded by Better Together. The CPR includes the repositioning of the garden beds to allow for better accessibility for people of all abilities, and also includes the additional above ground garden beds, vertical gardens, fencing and extending the shade sail cover. All elements of the community garden project are removable should TRC ever further develop the land. The community garden will be subject to a licence agreement which will capture the relevant clausing relating to the removal of the garden should that become necessary. This report is presented to council for consideration in line with the CPR policy, as the additional scope of the project holds a whole of life cost of greater than $10,000. I'm happy to take any questions. Thank you.
Questions, Councillor? Councillor Barty?
I'm just a bit confused with the stage 2 diagram on page 264. So where they've got like, what I'm assuming are the fruit trees on the right hand side, they all got pinched, is that correct?
Yes.
But yet the fence that they're putting in is not going around where the trees got.
That is my understanding.
Is that
yes.
right? Are they replacing the trees as well then, or?
That is also my understanding that they will replace the trees.
Okay.
If you like, I can take a question on notice to double check about the fence line, but that is, as per the diagrams that were provided in our conversations, The fencing is to go around the actual garden beds,
Garden
which
beds,
is,
but not
yeah.
the trees that got.
No, yeah, I guess it's a somewhat unusual thing for plants out of the ground to get pinched like that, so hopefully that doesn't occur again. But yes, if you'd like me to follow up with
Yeah, that's
Better Together and
yeah.
come back to you with the question on notice if you like.
Any more questions? Tanya on this one? Do we have a mover of the officer's recommendation? Councillor Lang moving. Seconder. Councillor Bilney. Councillor Lang.
No, I'm happy with that project. I think it's a great idea.
Anyone like to talk to this one? Councillor Cardew.
Thanks, Mayor. I won't be supporting this. We've already given them the land to build their complex on. We've given them land to create the community gardens, and now they're coming back for more land to put more gardens in. That precinct up there, as we all know, holds a lot of value, and that we need to, we're in the process of looking at what we can do with that precinct over the road. So, I know the officer has said that, yeah, it can be removed, but we all know that once you give somebody something, it's awfully hard to take it back again. So, we've already been more than generous, I feel. You know, we've given them the land to build their facility, we've given them the land for a communal garden, and I'm not in favour of giving them any more land in a precinct that is highly valuable to us, and we don't have any design concept plans in place at the moment, but it will incorporate that space up there, so I won't be supporting it.
Councillor Spanos.
Yeah, through the chair, I agree with Kev on this. I'm happy that I really am proud of what Better Together do there and what they've achieved. Having the garden that they have there currently and having the space that they have there currently, I would like to think that would be enough for them to be able to do what it is that they do there. And the opportunities that may come later, where we may need that land for something, it's always much more difficult to go back and ask for it back after we've already given it up. So, yeah, I won't be agreeing with this all, sorry.
Councillor Billy.
Yeah, through the chair. Look, I acknowledge what both councillors have just said. I think, from my point of view, it's been very clear, everything's going to be removable. They understand that, they've acknowledged it. I think we've mitigated the future there. The land is critical, no doubt, but I think officers have done everything to negotiate a potential change down the track. So I don't see any dramas with this at all.
Thanks, Councillor Bilney. Anyone else like to talk to this? Okay, we have a mover and seconder. Those in favour? That's carried. Thank you. So Councillor Hayden, Spanos and Cardew. 13.2, Capital Projects Monthly Report, September 2025. I'll hand over to Christy. Thanks, Christy.
Thank you, Mr Mayor, and through the Chair. This report provides an overview of Council's capital project performance in relation to the approved budget to the end of September. It aims to offer a summary of capital budget expenditure as well as the status of the individual projects within the capital program. It is noted this report is now against the adopted Budget Review 1 data. This report is for Council to receive and note, and through the Chair I'm happy to take any questions.
Councillor Barty.
Yeah, thanks for your responses, Chrissy, to those queries I hadn't make sense and was mostly my typos. My only question today is, with the defect liability period, was that getting added to the phases? So was it going to be like a phase 6 for that 95 to 100%?
It's
Or are you just going to leave it?
the last
It's
phase.
within, you're just keeping it within that? Okay, yeah, that was my only question.
Thank you. Any questions, councillors? Do we have a mover of the officer's report? Councillor Barty's moving. Seconder. Councillor Hayden. Councillor Vardy?
No, nothing further.
Councillor Hayden? Anyone like to talk to this one? Those in favour? Carried. That's 7, thank you. So that brings us to 14.1. Community and Corporate Services, 14.1, Financial Report, September 2025. I'll hand over to you, Erica. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So thank you for receiving the finance report to the end of September. Our operating revenue and expenses are tracking closely with budget expectations, with both having a less than 1% variance year to date. Following rate payments, our funds invested with QTC have reached just over 80 million at the month end. In consideration of cash movements over the next 4 months, including future revenue, expenses and our constrained funds, the remaining available cash balance is forecast to be 46 million at that point in time. For September, 2 emergency purchases were required, one to repair an electrical changeover for a generator and another for tree removal. Local and councillor endorsed spend remains strong, representing 93% of our purchases for the month. The recommendation 2 on today's report includes the addition of 1 sole supply, being for Vivek Chopra. Hopefully I've presented this. As the new audit committee chair. Following a process similar to recruitment, many applications were reviewed, interviews conducted, and ultimately a selection was made. Vivek is a successful applicant who brings a wealth of experience to our organisation as both an accountant, auditor, and has extensive board experience. Thank you for reviewing this month's finance report, and I'm happy to take any questions.
Councillors, questions for Erica? Do we have a mover of the officer's recommendation? Councillor Lang and Councillor Spanos. Councillor Lang?
No, you guys do an awesome job looking at those figures day in, day out. Thank you.
Thank you.
Final call, councillors. Those in favour? Carried. That's 7. Thank you. That brings us down to 14.3, Q1 Performance Report 2025-26. Thank you, Don, if you'd like to talk to that one.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Councillors, I am happy to present this is the first quarterly performance report for this financial year. This report presents Council's progress with regard to initiatives in the 25-26 operational plan, as well as customer request management and social media performance. You might notice the format has evolved a bit since the last report, as we continue to develop the format and increase accessibility not only to councillors, but hopefully to the overall community. One particular highlight within is the ongoing improvement of our after-hours service since we changed to Oracle as a provider about a year ago. In the last quarter, they have raised the bar even further, and we're very happy with that transition. I'm happy to take any questions.
Councillor Kaji.
Yeah, thanks. I note that the report has been restructured, and I'm not very happy with the way it's been done. In the 98, you talk about percentages in some things and numbers in others, but in the second percentage, you've got 98% of answered calls with low abandonment rates. How many calls, how many calls were there and how many calls were abandoned? There's no information, and that's what I'm talking about. I'm not happy with the restructure of this information given to us. We don't know how many, unless you can tell me now. And the other thing is, how many calls were abandoned after 30 seconds? That information is not here either.
Thank you, Councillor Cardew. If you, that is correct. On the first page, it does give percentages, but on I believe it's page 6 of the report, it gives further detail. The Centre Pal data of calls abandoned, 96 calls were abandoned, 4,343 calls were answered.
So what page you say?
So page.
That's 368 of the overall agenda.
Yeah. It's got the little table.
But I will take that under advisement to make that clearer and
Yeah,
format
because
that.
I was reading sort of like your brief summary here, customer experience, and then I would have liked to have seen it all right there.
Absolutely.
Somewhere else in the report, because it's confusing to me.
Yeah, to put the numbers versus percentage.
We also have some other questions on this. In here, there's a few on-time, in the table here, you've got, complete budget on time, et cetera. There's a few in here in the red, won't be on time. Are you able to give us a brief explanation on those ones?
Though I would have to take that under notice for, to direct those to the managers of those relevant service areas. They are responsible for reporting their own performance, but I can certainly.
One of the ones that does concern me greatly is the one on page 23, reference 3.6.5 and 3.6.6, which relates to the investigate and the feasibility of sewer and culvert in surrounding areas, and the other one, investigation of feasible options for sewage utilities for the central business district in Herndon Township, and on time is no on both of them, and the explanation paused due to competing priorities and directions and new directions. Well, those two things there were specific resolutions of council. So I don't accept the explanation that it's paused due to competing priorities and new directions.
I'll have to take those on notice and provide a response.
Well, my final question is, I don't see anything in here about the implementation of the pressure cleaning crew that we were going to do in the operational phase. I did ask the general manager a little while back if something was happening with this. Mark did give me an answer, but I don't see anything about that reflected in here. Is this the right place for it?
So, through the chair, so the operational plan was endorsed by council as part of the budget. Not every operational activity that we do is necessarily specifically mentioned in the operational plan, because we do obviously a lot of different things. So the operational plan basically generally includes the more strategic high level initiatives that are occurring, but that doesn't mean that if it's not in the operational plan that's not proceeding. It's still something that's being progressed by the manager for environment and natural resource management.
Thank you, Mark. I'll address that in business without notice. Thank you.
Any more questions? Do we have a mover of the officer's recommendation? Councillor Spanos moving. Seconder? Councillor Vardy. Anyone like to talk to that? Those in favour? Carried, that's 7. So the next one is 14.4, TRC Grant Program Activity Report, Q1 2025-26, July to September 2025.
Good morning, Council. Through the Chair, I'm pleased to present the Q1 Grant Program Activity Report for the 2025-26 financial year, covering the period from July to September. During the first quarter, Council allocated just over 1/3 of the annual $100,000 budget across 45 successful applications, supporting initiatives that strengthen community wellbeing, enhance environmental outcomes, and recognise youth achievement across our region. The majority of the funding supported community, followed by youth excellence and environmental initiatives, reflecting continued strong participation and diverse engagement across all 3 streams. We continue to see high interest and positive outcomes from community organisations and young people, demonstrating how valued and effective this program is in building capacity across the Tablelands region. A balance remains available for the remainder of the financial year, and the program continues to deliver positive outcomes consistent with TRC's grant program objectives and the corporate plan 2025-30. Thank you very much, and I'm happy to take questions.
Thanks, Megan. Questions? No questions. Do we have a mover of the officer's recommendation? Councillor Bilney. Seconder, Councillor Spanos. Councillor Bilney.
Yeah, through the chair. Just another great example of community benefit under the grants program. Particular note, great to see the number of youth excellence supported in the first quarter in various ranges of sports and vocations. I do get great feedback also from the guidance that staff provide for the preparation of the applications through to the assessment and decision making and the final acquittal. So all made seamlessly. So I tip my hat to the staff involved. Well done.
Thanks, Councillor Bilney. Anyone else like to talk to this one? We've got a mover and seconder. Those in favour? Carried. That's 7. That brings us to business without notice. Councillor Vardy.
Yeah, today I've just electronically tabling a report called Murky Waters, which has been prepared by the Yungaburra Peterson Creek Landcare Group. And this is a report that they've been doing water testing at close to the source of Peterson Creek and on where the Peterson Creek walking track is. And the report is showing like the drastic decline in water quality from the source to the area called Platypus Bend along the track. So the report summarises like the first 6 months of the testing, and that testing is ongoing. It's been reported to Queensland Health and DEDC, and Queensland Health advised the group to put up a sign to let people know that the water wasn't safe to drink or enter or anything like that. So those signs are now in place. There is a media release going out. It may already be out, and Charlie Micallef interviewed the group last week, and that'll be airing soon as well. So I just like everybody to be aware that this report's out there. It is accessible to the community on the group's website, which is petersoncreek.org.au. There's a little tab there for documents, and you can get it there. If you can't, contact me and I'm happy to send it out. TRC's been engaging. I know Tudor, Paul and Charles have all engaged with the group and offering ongoing assistance and advice there. So thank you. I just would like it to be received and noted.
Thanks very much, Councillor Vardy.
Oh, do you want voting on tonight?
We can just receive it. I don't mind.
Just as a note,
yeah, it's just there. So, yeah.
Thanks. We'll go Councillor Vilney.
Yeah, through the chair. This is like a general matter rather than a business without notice. It's just a follow on from the CEO's report as well as the Mayoral Minute. From my take of the local government conference last week. I do want to thank the Mayor and the CEO for their advocacy efforts with the various ministers, the Director Generals, Shadow Ministers, and particularly the sounding that we got with the Grants Commission. I think it was a very good hearing. I'm not sure what the outcome will be, but if you're not heard, you've got no chance. The key for representing TRC at that conference was developing relationships, which was front and foremost in all our interactions. A couple of points that I took out in addition was a comment made by the National Heavy Vehicle Regulator stating that it is expected that there will be an increase by 77%, pardon me, of heavy vehicles over the next decade. So that will bring some challenges. They also, there was a mention about how black spot funding is generally undersubscribed. So that may raise some potential opportunities for us to investigate potential areas that might subscribe to that black spot funding. And finally, last Friday, I had the honour to be invited as a guest to the Australian Honours Awards morning tea, which was hosted by the Cairns Regional Council. It was truly humbling to be in the presence of past awardees for their various chosen vocations. I did meet with around 5 recipients from the Tablelands, and I believe that there's possibly an opportunity for TRC to investigate how we may be able to celebrate the local awardees and host something here in the future. So that's something I'd just like to note. But yeah, plenty of opportunity. I haven't provided this to Jackie, but I will give my formal confirmation in this afternoon. Thank you.
Councillor Hayden.
Okay, this is a statement more than anything. It's deeply disappointing to see the destruction of the Mount Gunn swimming pool, a facility that has held so much value for our small community. For generations, it wasn't just a pool, it was a place where children learned to swim, families gathered and the community came together through the hot summers. In a town with limited recreational options, this loss hits especially hard. It sends a message that smaller communities don't matter as much, when in fact places like Mount Garner need these facilities the most. The pool was a vital part of our town's well-being, safety and community spirit, and its removal leaves a gap that cannot easily be filled. It is deeply disappointing when infrastructure that was built and paid for by Mount Garner community removed and handed over to other departments without consultation. Transferring or removing such infrastructure disregards local ownership and undermines community pride and trust in council decision making. But I suppose it isn't much different to the In Hot Springs Community Hall, fundraised totally by locals from a community of 50 people, not council. We deserve to have our voices heard and to see genuine investment in keeping small communities strong and supported, not stripped of the few facilities we have. So I'll tell you now that it's very disappointing to go into Mount Garner, to take the sheds and everything that the community has built and not even asked where they're going or even communicated to where they are going. So that's our statement.
Thanks, Councillor Hayden. Any other business without notice? Councillor Cardew.
Yeah, thanks, Chair. I've got 3 items of business without notice. The first one is I sent you, the Deputy Mayor, CEO, and Councillor Lang a message while you were at the conference to ask if you would go and have a chat with the Mayor from Richmond Shire, John Wharton. I heard him on the radio while driving through Richmond that morning and talking about incentives, revenue raising incentives that their Shire have undertaken and to reduce raising rates. So they've taken on incentives to raise revenue without the need for having to continually increase rate rises. So I'm just wondering whether you had the opportunity to speak to the Mayor.
I haven't spoken to John Wharton, Councillor Cardew. I'm happy to follow it up. One of the programs that he was talking about was the council was getting into agriculture. They were growing chickpeas, I think. But Councillor Billey might know a little bit more.
Yeah, through the chair, I received Councillor Cardew's text message and I had all intentions of meeting with him on the Wednesday, the final day of the conference. He wasn't there, so I didn't have a chance to chat to him.
Look, but yeah, I'm happy to follow it up and find out exactly what those programs were. I'm only aware of the chickpea cropping, but apart from that, I'll have to find out.
Yeah, he did speak about the chickpea cropping on the radio, but the big one where they generate a lot of income is through, they are, I believe, a tier 1 contractor themselves that carries out road construction work for anyone who wants it done. So that was the one that made my ears prick. But he also said that they have other incentives which he didn't elaborate on, and that the CEO was compiling a document that they were going to share at some stage with their incentives, revenue raising incentives in it. So it might be worthwhile if our CEO and yourself could make contact with their CEO and the Mayor and find out what they are and see if there's anything in there that we can implement.
Thank you. We'll do Councillor Tarju.
My second item is, as I alluded to before, I'd just like to ask the General Manager where we're at with the pressure cleaning crew.
I'll have to take that on notice. I have had a discussion with Tudor and asking for an update on that very reasonably, but I haven't received that update yet, so I'll take it on notice.
Thank you, Mark. And my third item is, when is the lease going to be provided to the APA as per the resolution of December 24 ACM?
I'm happy to speak to that if you like.
Hand over to the CEO.
So initially, the APA sought to take on the APA's trust, the building as trust, and they subsequently, after council made its efforts, they refused. Following that resolution of council, the APA were provided with a lease that was drawn up to their specifications. They subsequently had that for a number of months and then refused it because they said it was not viable. A renewed lease, a revised lease was provided in March 31 or March 13. After several months, they again refused that lease. Yvette and I met with them in, I'm thinking it's June or July, provided them with a license, which is something, a draft license, which is something that they would be able to afford. And the last contact I had was a few days later, where they said they would take it to their committee. So we have sought to discharge the resolution. It has been refused. The lease was refused. We've worked with them on several occasions to try and come up with an alternative, but those alternatives were not viable in their view.
Well, I'm getting mixed messages here, because I've had members of the APA crying to me on the phone, crying to me over the phone, because they can't negotiate with council officers to get a lease as per what was promised to them and as per what was council's resolution in December last year. So we're nearly 12 months down the track and there's still nothing happened, and they are extremely upset and have no confidence in the negotiation at all. So I'm just wondering, when will that lease be provided to them as per the ACM resolution in December 24?
Thank you, Councillor Kevin. What I can say is they have draft leases and they have draft licenses. They have refused to sign those to date. So they have formally refused the last lease that was provided. They have been given a license, a draft license, which they have sat on. So we have worked now for 11 months to try and come up with an arrangement, and they have chosen not to sign. I can't force someone to sign something. It's just that simple. They have not come back to negotiate. They have sought to use councillors to come up with a decision, but we have said from Yvette's perspective, so each of these agreements costs about $10,000. So we probably spent at least $40,000 trying to come up with an agreement that would be suitable. So the last contact I had with them was we provided them with a license. We went through that license with them. It significantly removed a lot of the financial burdens that they would have had to comply with, which was consistent with the concerns that they had raised. So I cannot force someone to sign something when they consistently have refused to do so, and council has worked to come up with other options.
My understanding from speaking to them is that they don't want a license. They repeatedly say that they want a lease, and I'm also looking at a piece of correspondence from our officers that in part says, and I'll read it out to you, Further, as previously advised, Council is currently reviewing the entire community asset portfolio. TRC is thus unable to enter into a new lease agreement with the APA at this time over this facility. To do so could constrain Council's decisions in relation to the future of this asset. Even if TRC could grant an APA a lease at this time, it would be required to be on Council's current terms and conditions, not those that applied some 30 years ago when circumstances and legislation were different. I am thus directed that should you not be in a position to make a decision regarding the offered licence agreement, you consider alternative options for premises.
Yes, and what was that date?
Let me have a look.
So they had.
That was 16th of October, 2025.
So they consistently refused to sign the leases that were provided, even though they were written to their specifics. They then refused to sign the licence. So 11 months later, given that they have gone to councillors, they have not come back to me.
I would like to think that the officers, including yourself, Ms. CEO, that you have the skills to be able to negotiate during 11 months course of this has been going on, and in accordance with Council's ACM direction, you would have the skills to be able to provide them with a acceptable lease.
They've been provided with a lease. It could not be more favourable. They've been provided with, each time they've come back, we initially changed the trustee. We then changed 2 different leases at cost to council. We then offered them a licence because they refused, after months, they refused to sign the 2 draft leases. They've been offered a licence. I cannot speak for them. I can't give them advice. I can't tell them what they can financially afford to do, but I can't give them more favourable terms than I would give every one of those 155 different groups we have licences or leases for. The leases they were provided and the trustee was all exactly as they wished. They could not sign them because in their view they were not viable. So they have been offered a licence which does not attract the significant financial burden of a lease, noting the condition of that building. So for our leaseholders, they generally have to maintain those buildings. I think you can have a simple look at it. Council needs to decide what it's going to do with the building and then commit to spending a substantial amount of money to restore that building if it is going to do so. So councillors are completely aware of where we're sitting with our financial position and also the state of all of our buildings, which number more than 800. So at this point in time, we have to look at which ones you're going to keep, pour money into those that you are going to keep so that they are maintained at a standard level. They cannot afford to maintain that building under a lease. And that is what they have said. And it is not my role to force someone, an organisation, to sign something that they say to me, I cannot afford to sign. It's just that simple. Yvette, did you want to add any more to that?
Through the chair, I would like to add to this. Is there an opportunity here for us to renegotiate with the APA, sit down together and have another meeting with them concerning a lease, which is what I understand they're asking for? Is there some way that we, irrespective of who's right or wrong here, I don't care, is there an opportunity here for us to get together and try to come to some sort of an arrangement?
Look, it's a matter for you. We've sought to reach an arrangement with them, which has been on their financial terms the entire time. They have not made an arrangement with us. They've sat on the different drafts and have not signed them. You need to be mindful, though, that you have a lot of organisations. The amount of money we've already spent in our time and also getting those drafts done is consistent. So we've already spent $40,000 as part of this process. It's open to you. If you want to meet them and you want to bring a resolution with the terms of the lease, it's a matter for you. My job is to make sure that we treat with these groups fairly. We have gone above and beyond in trying to get an agreement with some of the groups. In part, the reason you don't hear from every single association is in part they just deal with us We sort out agreements, they're grateful for whatever assistance council can offer, and they also understand that the obligations that they take on, particularly in respect of a lease. But you cannot make a lease that is really a license in terms of exclusive access. These are legal terms, they have legal conditions. So if you've got someone who really wants conditions that would ordinarily be in a lease, but they can't be, well, guess what? That's called, they've got to accept the conditions that are usually in a lease or the conditions that are accepted in a license. We can't create a lease that is really a license.
Councillors, we need to be careful here. We're having a discussion in a public forum, and the CEO is acting in council's best interest, council and ratepayers' best interest. The CEO has been acting in our best interest, and we need to entrust the CEO to do the job she's employed to do. I understand there's groups in the community that want more or want something different, but we need to entrust the CEO to do the job that she's supposed to do. She's been doing exactly that. So I don't think it's wise to have this discussion in a public forum. I don't think we should continue to talk about it publicly. It should be dealt with between the CEO and the APA. Councillors.
I'm simply asking a question, Mr. Mayor.
And you've been given the answer, Councillor Kaji. You've been given a very detailed answer. And I think we need to let the CEO do her job.
I'm not disputing the CEO's job. I am appalled with the way this has been handled. I am appalled with the way we are dealing with our not-for-profit organisations in our community. I am appalled. I am embarrassed to being a councillor on this council when we go through and deal with our not-for-profit organisations. We've seen what happened last council meeting. The outrage that's in the community out there with the Junior League and the Sailing Club and now the APA. It's not good, Mr. Mayor.
Yeah.
I'd like to go on the public record. I reject any suggestion that Yvette and I have acted in any way that is appalling. I reject any suggestion that our officers have not treated each of these organisations with the utmost respect and used our skills and knowledge to reach an agreement that is consistent with the community interest. I absolutely reject that, and I find your statements deeply offensive, not only for me, but also for my staff.
I'm not here to be offensive.
You just said I was appalling.
I'm not here to be offensive, Mr. CEO.
You've just made a statement.
I asked the question, why haven't we given a lease after an 11-month period in accordance with the direction of council?
And you are now on the public record calling out our conduct and performance as appalling, and that is completely inappropriate.
I said I am appalled.
And appalled at what?
At the way this has been handled.
Yes, and who is handling it?
I don't know.
You do know. I just said I'm handling it. You're aware that I'm handling it, and you're aware that our general counsel is handling it.
Councillor, you're out of order. It's a public meeting.
I'm glad you've said that. Thank you very much.
All right. Is there any other business without notice? All right, we'll move on. Would councillors like a break before we do confidential items? Yes or no?
I'd like to have a break, thanks.
Yeah. Okay. 15 minutes? 15-minute break.
Yeah.
Okay, councillors, we'll reconvene. We've now reached item 17, which is our confidential items. In order to go into confidential, that in accordance with section 254J3 of the Local Government Regulation 2012, the meeting will close at this part of the meeting to the public for reasons and matters noted. Item G, negotiations relating to a commercial matter involving the local government for which a public discussion would be likely to prejudice the interest of the local government. And this relates to item 17.1, deconstruction of Malanda Patrick English Pavilion procurement. 17.2, T00254 project management, Malanda multi-purpose facility. 17.3, T00253 project management and contract administration / engineering services, register of pre-qualified suppliers. Could we have a mover to go into confidential on that basis, please? Councillor Barty's moving and Councillor Bilney seconding. Those in favour? Carried, that's 7. Okay, we're in confidential now. Thank you. Okay, councillors. Item 17.1, deconstruction of Malanda Patrick English Pavilion procurement. Do we have a mover of the officer's recommendation? Councillor Bilney? Do we have a seconder? Councillor Hayden? Those in favour? Carried, that's 5. Councillor Spanos and Councillor Cardew. Item 17.2, T00254 project management, Malanda multi-purpose facility. Do we have a mover of the officer's recommendation? Councillors, Councillor Barty and Councillor Bilney. Those in favour? Carried, that's 6. Councillor Spanos. Item 17.3, T00253 project management and contract administration / engineering services, register of pre-qualified suppliers. Do we have a mover of the officer's recommendation? Councillor Barty and Councillor Spanos. Those in favour? Carried, that's 7. Okay, councillors, there being no further business, our next meeting is the 27th of November.